was. But we're going to begin our meeting today with an invocation from Drea Parker, and she is representing Interfaith Winston-Salem. And it'll be followed by the Pledge of Allegiance led by Commissioner Dan Bessie. And please stand if you are able.
It is so good seeing you all. Thank you once again for allowing me the opportunity to provide the invocation for today's meeting. And with that, we shall begin. In the spirit of compassion and community, let us come together and pray. Spirit of life, God, Allah, or gods of many names, please be in our hearts and minds as we gather today with the intent of doing good for the people of our community. Guide us so that our efforts may be blessed with insights, understanding, wisdom, and respect for all. May our deep faith in the deity or deities that serve each of us give us strength to act honestly and well in all matters before us. So mote it be. Amen. Ashe. Inshallah. Amen.
Amen. Thank you.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you, Mrs. Parker. Thank you. Citizens who are interested in participating in the public session portion of the meeting, this is not public hearings. We have some public hearings today, but we do have every month a public opportunity to address the commissioners. And if you're interested in that, actually, if you're on the phone, you can call 336-422-1200, and you'll be placed on hold until the public session begins. And if you're a member of the audience who is also wanting to participate in the public session, you need to fill out a speaker card. You do not need to fill out a speaker card to participate in any of the public hearings. And we have several related to bonds, and we have one related to a particular zoning request. You do not need to fill out a card for that. But if you want to speak about anything else later, you do need to fill out a card. We have two items that were added to last week's agenda, and we do need to have a vote to approve the agenda as amended and presented to the commissioners. Do I have a motion to do that, please?
Move to approve.
Motion by Commissioner McDaniel, a second.
Second.
Second by Commissioner Wisenhunt. Any discussion? All in favor, please say aye. Aye. Carries unanimously. First item on the agenda is a public hearing and consideration of a special use permit request by David and Betty Lawson for a land clearing and inert debris, which is called an LCID, land clearing and inert debris, landfill, and borrow site area for property located on the east side of Piney Grove Road and across from Lawson Acres Drive. It is zoning docket F1624. And we did have a public hearing on this matter on March the 30th of 2023, and it was continued for today. So the process of approving the issuance, this is called a special use permit, is a quasi-judicial hearing which requires speakers for this item to speak under oath. And actually, I also need to say that the board shall not be limited. We're not like a court of law exactly in this case, but we do have a judicial role as the board. But we are not limited to consideration of evidence that would be admissible in a court of law. Notice we have there's a lot broader than if we were in a court of law, what happens here. Discussion and deliberation among the board shall occur in open session, and the board may question any witness. All evidence must be presented prior to the board rendering a decision. And we do have Mr. Chris Murphy, who is the Planning and Development Services Director. He's going to give an overview of the actual case, and which is very helpful for everyone. And then when he's finished, we'll actually begin the hearing part. So, Mr. Murphy, get sworn in, please.
I do.
Good afternoon again, Commissioners. Yes, this is a request of David and Betty Lawson for a 73.45 acre site located on the east side of Piney Grove Road across from Lawson Acres Drive. The request is for an elected body special use permit for an LCID greater than 2 acres in size and 2 borrow sites. Just a little bit of, an LCID is a specific type of landfill, and it is for land clearing and inert debris, just as it says. But a little bit of further explanation is that soil, rock, concrete, yard waste such as brush, those kind of things, and then untreated and unpainted wood. So I just wanted to let folks know that's what this is, as contrasted to a construction demolition landfill that has all kinds of construction and building debris and or a sanitary landfill. It's neither one of those. It's a land clearing and inert debris landfill. This is the subject property shown on the Legacy Growth Management Area map. It is located in Growth Management Area 5, the rural growth management area. But a LCID is a permitted use, and the table of permitted use is subject to an elected body special use permit, which is why we are here today. This is the subject property shown in yellow there on the east side of Piney Grove Road. Just north of an existing LIS zoned piece of property that is also an LCID that is owned and operated by the petitioner, in this case, the Lawsons.
Before you leave that slide, I'm sorry to interrupt you.
That's no problem.
Because we received a couple of emails from sort of neighbors. Could you identify the neighbor? Because I know this is the map that has the best picture. Could you identify the neighborhoods?
And again, I'm not the world's greatest at neighborhoods, but I know this is Piney Grove Road. I believe this is Lawson Acres Drive. There is a neighborhood here that is the road names Ridge Hill, Ambridge, are those road names, and then across the tributary to Blues Creek or Blues Lake is Horse Creek Run, Stable Hill Trail, Horse Creek Court, Aaron Lane, and I have heard the name of the subdivision, but I forget what it is. But essentially, that's on the other side of the creek, not accessed via Piney Grove Road, but again, directly adjacent to the approximately 75 acre piece of property shown in yellow. And I think a number of folks from this neighborhood are here, so they can tell you the exact name. But anyway, that's where they are on the east side of Blues Creek.
Okay, thank you.
Oh, definitely. This is the same property outlined in yellow. It shows the basically wooded nature of this with some streams. It does show the lotting pattern of the subdivisions, the one on the west side of Piney Grove Road, and then the one across Blues Creek. This is looking east across Piney Grove Road towards the entrance to the site. This is looking west from the entrance across Piney Grove Road, again looking over to Lawson's Acre Drive across Piney Grove Road. This is looking north along Piney Grove Road. The entrance to the proposed site is further to the north along on the right-hand side as you're looking at the image. And this is looking south along Piney Grove Road. Again, the site is to the left. This is the site plan that is shown. This includes the full approximately 75 acres. It does show a haul road, which is the image that where some of those photos were taken from. There is an existing road in there to access this property, but this would be a series of haul roads, and then they would fill in with the land clearing and inert debris landfill through various cells working west to east. But in order to get in and do this, they would have to come in and put in some erosion control measures up front. But again, it would propose to fill about a 20-acre piece of property in about 4 or 5 various cells. And then there are a couple of other areas on the site that's proposed for borrow, which is where you're basically trying to balance your the topo on the site through cut and fill. So there's some areas that would be cut, and that soil would either be used to cover the individual cells or could be sold to other folks that need fill dirt. This is the site plan area that shows where the stockpiles will be close to Piney Grove Road. Keep in mind, this is a special use permit, and the issuance of a special use permit is subject to the Board of Commissioners making findings related to 4 findings. The first finding is that the use will not materially endanger the public health or safety if located where proposed and developed according to the application and plan as submitted and approved. Staff's determination on that or recommendation on that is that you could find, yes, that is true. The second finding that the use meets all required conditions and specifications. Again, staff's finding is yes, the subject request will meet the minimum requirements of the UDO, or else it would not be before you because we don't bring forward plans that don't meet the requirements of the ordinance. The third finding is that the use will not substantially injure the value of adjoining or abutting property, or that the use is a public necessity. Planning staff does not have the expertise to make property values determinations, so therefore staff does not make a recommendation regarding that finding. And then finally, under finding 4, that the location and character of the use, if developed according to the application and plans submitted and approved, will be in harmony with the area in which it is to be located and in general conformity with Legacy 2030. Again, from a staff perspective, we believe that the commissioners can make that finding. It is adjacent to an existing LIS zone property that has been used for a land clearing and inert debris landfill for over 20 years. And again, from a ordinance standpoint, the use is allowed with a special use permit, and therefore it's presumed to be in harmony with the area unless there's testimony otherwise.
Before you go on,
Yes.
Chris, if I may, I'd have a question for our county attorney on the legal burden of proof for these 4 items. As I recall from my days on the council, I believe that a couple of them, the burden of proof is on the applicant. For a couple of the others, the burden of proof would be evidence presented by opponents, if any. Am I remembering that correctly? And if so, can you identify which is which?
The initial burden is on the proponent to bring forward evidence that these have been satisfied. Then the burden shifts to the opponents to present concrete evidence that they have not. Item number 4, being in harmony with the surrounding areas, that pretty much is presumed to qualify if this is a use that's allowed in that zoning. So if there is concrete evidence proposed by the opponents, that could overcome that.
And are there any specific requirements that apply to evidence on substantial injury to the value of adjoining or abutting property?
And again, I'm sorry, I should have mentioned that one also. The third one also would be presumed that the use would not injure abutting property unless concrete evidence is brought forward in testimony by opponents showing how their property would be injured.
And are there any requirements for the nature of that evidence or qualification to be considered?
In general, that should be presented by an expert if you're talking about evaluation of property. So if that should be somebody, an appraiser or somebody in the real estate industry who would have particular knowledge of that.
Thank you.
And if I may, as long as I'm speaking, Mr. Chairman, you did mention that there were some emails that were sent, and you also mentioned that no ex parte communication can be considered because this is a hearing, and a quasi-judicial hearing. So I just wanted to clarify, mainly to the people present here today and the public, that the reason the commissioners did not respond to those emails that you sent is because they really could not read them and they could not respond, and testimony needs to be based on what is said here during the hearing. And so emails that were sent in separately can't be considered in the determination.
May I ask a question? What will happen to groundwater where the expansion is concerned? And they're not building a brand new facility, they're expanding the current facility. So the question is, will the water underground be affected, and will it affect the neighborhood surrounding that area?
I believe that's a question that could best be answered when the proponents have the opportunity to present their case.
Okay, thank you.
Mr. Chairman of the Board, I believe I only have one additional slide, and that is the action needed. Again, as we've previously discussed, an LCID is a permitted use in the RS40 zoning district with the issuance of a special use permit from the elected body following a site plan review by the Planning Board. The Planning Board determined that the site plan meets all UDO requirements at their February 9th, 2023 meeting. What is needed today, again, I know we did this on the 30th, but what is needed today, since the public hearing was held open, is to hold a public hearing and make a determination regarding the 4 findings, and then either issue or deny the special use permit based on the actions and beliefs that you hold regarding those 4 findings. And with that, I'll be glad to answer any questions.
Any questions for Chris?
Chris, would you go back to the site plan map and I guess that one there is okay, and point out I believe there were 5 phases, point those out where fill would occur at different times, and then the bar area and the areas that are planned for erosion control measures. There's probably several, but there's the main ones were two, it's what I call to the east side or closest to that creek. Point those out where they can be seen that activity would go on.
I will, Commissioner Linville. This, if you follow my mouse, this is part of the haul road, but this is the phase 1 cell. Again, think of these, 2 to 3 acres apiece, probably, plus or minus. So that's the first cell, first phase. This is the second phase. Again, my mouse is wandering. If you follow my cursor, then this would be the third phase. Then this would be the 4th phase, and this would be the final phase. This is one of the erosion control devices that is shown here at the eastern terminus of kind of the phase 3 area. I'm assuming that would be some type of a rock check dam with silt fencing and those kind of things that would hold materials on the site. And then similarly, there's one that is further to the east at the eastern terminus of where cell 5 is. This is Blues Creek, and this is the neighborhood across Blues Creek. No fill can take place within the floodplain area, and then there is a buffer on the inside of that floodplain area. So the floodplain and the prescribed buffer would be maintained. There's a buffer around the entire perimeter. There are, and again, I probably can't point to all of them, but they are the green areas on the site, and I'm not sure which one comes first, but this is one of the borrow areas here. If you follow my mouse, this is a bar area here. There's one here, and there's one here. I believe there were 4, perhaps 5. I see 4 little splashes of green color, and those are the borrow areas. Keep in mind, this is a multi-year type thing. The existing LCID, which is much smaller than this, has been in operation for over 20 years. So again, the petitioner may have an idea of the length of time that this may be under permit with the state, because again, you get the special use permit, but then you have to get permits from the North Carolina Department of Environment, Natural Resources is what it used to be called. It might be DWQ now, but they essentially have to also issue a permit for this in compliance with state statutes related to landfills. But again, this could go on for 20, 30 years. So when these various phases get filled up is dependent upon the stream of LCID material coming into the landfill.
Chris, this is kind of an emotional issue, no matter how you look at it. But I was out there yesterday, and some of the people I talked to said, look, we've got deer, we have cows, we have wildlife, and to enlarge, they're going to have to clear all of this land off. What's going to happen to them? I have no clue. And oh, by the way, I don't see any cows, and I don't see any deer. They said, well, you just have to take our word for it. So the question is, how will that affect the environment and the living conditions around the area? And that was followed by another question. How many more trucks hauling all kinds of things, big trucks, are going to be coming in and out of the enlarged area? Can you get to any of that?
Commissioner Linville, the second question would probably be best answered Commissioner Plyler. The second question would probably be best answered by the petitioner. As to the first question, again, they are proposing to do an LCID, which has requirements related to buffer yards and those kind of things. If this were denied today, they would still have the right to go in and timber the property tomorrow. So there's not anything that would preclude going in and timbering the property outside of an LCID. I mean, everyone that owns property has the right to do that. There are some certain standards that have to be followed, but timbering operations could happen today regardless of whether this was approved. That would have the same type of impact to vegetation and potentially wildlife. But again, that gets back to property rights and other things that are set forth in state statute. So.
Well, my final question is, if this is turned down, where will the excess garbage, or whatever you want to call it, be taken?
Commissioner Plyler, again, I understand what you're asking. Keep in mind, this is not a sanitary landfill. It's a land clearing and inert debris. So it would be, the rock and the soil and that type of material. To answer to your question, it would just go to another LCID if there are any that have excess capacity. If this isn't approved and, there is a need, it's going to go somewhere more than likely in the county. If not, it will go out of the county. It's not like the debris is all of a sudden going to stop. It'll have to go somewhere.
Thank you.
Any other questions for Mr. Murphy?
One question, Mr. Chair. Mr. Murphy, are anywhere in the requirements applicable to this site in the UDO or elsewhere that are referenced include any hours of operation limitations?
I think I had looked that up last time, and I think I was prepared for that answer, but I did not have it pulled up today. But I will have my handy ordinance right here, and the hours of operation in RS and RM districts. The hours of operation shall be limited to between the hours of 7 a.m. and 7 p.m.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Any other questions for Chris? All righty, thank you. Last week, when we did this back 3 weeks ago on March 30th, we did this in a fairly inefficient way, and since we have a fair number of people here today, I'm trying to think of a way to be a little more efficient in the way that we actually conduct the hearing. And my thinking, and I had a conversation with our attorney a little bit, is that perhaps we could have Rosalind come forward for the swearing in, and if you desire to speak, if you would stand, even if you think you might speak, but you might not, if you think you just might, if you would stand up, we could probably swear all of you in at one time. So if you just stand up, if you might speak, we'll let Rosalind come forward. In fact, you can use the microphone, Rosalind, and just and speak what they're swearing, and they can all, hold up their right hand, and they can pretend they're putting their left hand on the Bible there, that they see that you have with them. And it's good you have a microphone. Great. That's helpful. Thank you.
May I ask you to please lay your left hand on the Bible and raise your right hand and respond to me? Do you swear that the testimony you are about to give is the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
Thank you very much, Rosalind. Okay, good. The other part, we will begin with those. We will actually start with those who would like to present an argument in favor of this matter. However, after the first speaker speaks, if anyone who is opposed to this has a particular question you would like to ask the speaker, you may do so. So literally, in fact, we could actually use the second microphone. Maybe Rosalind, you could help us. And you could actually ask a question with a microphone so we can all hear it and have a recording. and then the speaker who's at the podium can answer. Literally, you could be right next to each other if we did that actually some last time. But it allows you to have more of a conversation and not quite as formal to get questions answered. And I think that's a part of trying to make this a little more, I mean, what I think everyone's here to do is to try to understand the issues and get questions asked in a way that makes it easier. So we're going to give that a try.
So, Mr. Chairman, if I may, a suggestion. I know we have a number of people here, and everybody has a desire to be heard. If among yourself you could appoint a representative, that would be great. You don't have to. But there's really not a need to repeat arguments that have already been stated. So if someone has stated it well, that's fine. We want to hear everybody, but we also want to be able to keep the process moving.
Exactly, and in fact, a comment could be made, and all those in favor of it could even stand up, and it kind of visually shows. I've been to other hearings that do that, and that's sometimes a way to sort of send the message that we agree with what that speaker said. So we will begin with the sort of proponents of the arguments in favor of the landfill, and I'd like to invite anyone who'd like to come forward. You're all sworn in, and you can speak right up here at the podium. Just need to identify yourself and give us your address, and then you can speak. Just, well, you can come one at a time. You can get in the line, and we can be efficient. And if there's several that like to speak in favor, you could get several of you to come forward, which would be great too. Even if you don't want to speak or need to, you'll be able to. I think we can be more comfortable that way. That's perfect.
Okay, so I'm Rebecca Lawson. So I used to be married to their son, so it's my ex-in-laws that's applying for this. However, I also live on Stable Hill Trail in McCullough Downs. So I'm kind of hoping to shed light on both sides of it.
Could you step over towards the microphone just a little bit? Thank you.
I'm kind of hoping to shed light on both sides of it. I know this seems like it's a lot, or that it would cause a lot of issues, but the landfill's been there for over 20 years. David, who owns it, actually grew up less than 2 miles from there. The family's been here forever. It's very well maintained. Most people don't even know it's a landfill there unless they just, know of it from the area. It does a lot of good. They recycle. So most of the stuff that comes in does not just go straight into a hole. The wood that's brought in, that's in large pieces, is now recycled. It's chipped up and sold as mulch. So that's also something that neighbors can go do, is purchase mulch. You can also purchase the dirt and the sand rock and all of that. I just was able to get 3 loads of dirt instead of 1 load of dirt, because it was close and I was having to pay a dump truck driver by the hour. So it was close to my house. They also recycle concrete and asphalt, so that's not going in a landfill somewhere. Then that's resold as a usable surface to make a driveway, or, something that's going to stay and not run off like your normal crush and run stuff would run off your driveway. And if anything is required by David or by the commissioners or by the engineers that require a buffer around the property, if it says a 4-inch tree, he's going to make it an 8-inch tree. He goes above and beyond to overdo, to make sure everything's maintained properly. He would never do anything to hurt the environment. It actually is all very well maintained to keep it from hurting the environment. Erosion control and everything is kept up completely. I can understand where the neighborhood would be upset, as well, but like I said, it's been there for 20 years. It doesn't affect your property value. I just feel like it's definitely a necessity, because I know going down the road how many times people will just dump stuff on the side of the road because they don't want to drive to Winston to take it to another location. So I can't imagine how much is just going to be dumped on the side of the road if they're not able to be re-permitted. So,
Just stay put. Is there anyone who'd like to ask just our first speaker a question? Just, in fact, we'll get the microphone to you and you can ask it. And just tell us who you are and where you live.
Okay, Roscoe Luce, and I'm in Stable Hill, 2757, pass me every day.
I'm like, please don't get me out of my new neighborhood. I love it.
How long have you been in the house?
We started in November, so
So you've been in the house 5 months. Sitting there asking about what you guys.
If you could just give us your name and address.
Oh, I'm sorry. Andrew Saley, 2745 Stable Hill Drive, Trail. I've only been there about a few months myself. Concerned about the landfill, obviously, that's why. One question of a material that you claim that is ground up and put inside this.
no, it's not put in the landfill. That's what I'm saying. We don't, I used to be part of it. I'm no longer part of it. They grind it up to keep it from going in the landfill and repurpose it.
So it's stored on the site.
It is stored on the Piney Grove side, close to the road on the original property.
Okay, no, I was just wondering because when you say ground up as well, that 3257 placarded last night.
And that's, yeah,
That if it ends up into this lane.
it doesn't, that's why they started doing that, is so it wouldn't go into a landfill.
Okay, thank you.
Other questions for our first speaker? Thank you very much. Others that would like to speak in favor? Proponents? Just tell us your name and address, please.
Yeah, my name is Ron McGraw. I live at 2191 Piney Grove Road. A lot of those pictures, I mean, my house is in there. I've lived there for 23 years. You know, I've never had an issue with anything. It would be different if it was like a garbage landfill or something like that. But I mean, you're talking about tree limbs and trees and recyclable material. And, you know, as far as I'm concerned, you know, you've got a working class people that are working, that have a job, that, you know, hire other people into the community. I don't have an issue with that. And like I said, I've lived across from them for 23 years.
Good. Any questions for our second speaker? All right, thank you.
Oh, yeah. Well, I mean, like I said, a lot of the pictures that you guys saw, the property across, that's where I live.
You're right there.
I'm right there.
It's on Dawson Acre Drive, right beside it.
Got it. Others who would like to speak in favor? Tell us your name and address.
Hi, my name's Chris Hay. I work for EnviroTrack. My company came up with the plan that you're looking at there. And I just wanted to, I'm not really going to speak in favor. I just wanted to say a couple of things that were mentioned that are somewhat inaccurate, again, like last time. The fill area, which was outlined, is within this road here, right? And I think it was mentioned that there's 20 acres. It's actually less than 10 acres is the total area. There was a question about groundwater that somebody had. I don't know if you want to elaborate on what the question is. I guess, would groundwater be impacted or is impacted, or I'm not sure what the question is.
I think that was the question.
Oh, just would groundwater be impacted? Yeah, so the state requirements are that there's a separation between the bottom of any fill area and the groundwater, and that's part of the state permit approval process. So there is quite a separation. You know, I can't say what it is because I don't know where groundwater is, and I don't know the bottom of the landfill necessarily at this point because it could change. But the state will, on the last landfill, we changed it a couple of times. They were able to go a little bit deeper. And so then we had to show where groundwater was and what the separation was, and they maintained greater than 12-foot separation. The state allow you to do more than that. at this point, I don't know where groundwater is there. So I can't say what the separation is, but there must be a separation maintained.
Any questions? And just identify yourself, please.
It's Charles Campbell. I'm at Horse Creek Court. I was wondering if last time in the hearing, no one mentioned that Aqua NC has 2 facilities on this creek. We have a community well that is 250 feet from your property line, and we have a sewer treatment plant that is 125 feet from your property line.
Good. Well, actually, I'd like to ask you a question. Where is it, the sewer treatment plant?
Yes.
Is it any relationship to this endeavor?
Yes, it's about, maybe 300-400 feet down from your house, right on the creek. It's right before the last house on Stable Hill Trail. Now, if you take Horse Creek Trail, and you cross it and you go down towards the creek, it's just a little spur on the map. There is a huge well that supplies all the water for McCullough Downs. That hasn't been brought up a bit.
Chairman, if I may, could someone show us on the map, or show me, please?
Okay.
Sure, please.
You can control the cursor with the mouse, so you can show it on there if it shows up on there.
I think it's better we go to this map. Okay, so when we talk about the treatment plant, please, anybody correct me if I'm wrong, it's right there in that lot.
Okay.
Okay, the real concern is at the very bottom of this drive right here is the community well. And of course, that's of huge concern, and I know that you're trying to align the people, but I think every single person that was going to step up was going to talk about the well. So that's a big concern for us.
And perhaps you could address the
Okay, so
issue
now we
of
have more to-
any kind of potential contamination of groundwater contamination of that well.
So the water treatment facility, whatever it is, there would be no impact. Groundwater is going to be, from this property, is going to be headed mostly towards the stream, but it has a little bit of a southern component to it. So there's no way that this property could impact something to the north and east of it. Okay? So then, yeah, you might be concerned about this, but if you study geology or hydrogeology or most earth sciences, you learn that groundwater is going to discharge to that stream, and that stream is what's called a divide. So on both sides of the stream, water is likely headed almost perpendicular to it, just like these little streams here. And it's going to hit the stream. It's likely to discharge through the stream banks and be carried downstream. So my point is, anything on the west side of the stream can't impact something up gradient on the east side of the stream. There's a divide there. Groundwater hits the stream and then goes with the stream.
Yes, I'm sorry, please, go ahead and just identify yourself. I was busy trying to look, sorry.
It's going to run, sorry, if all of it's going to run into the creek.
And you are?
I'm Jennifer Luce, 2757 Stable Hill Trail. So if the runoff is going to hit the creek, that creek is a pipeline into Blues Lake. Is that going to contaminate the lake?
No, there's no contaminant. These are all inert objects that are being put on the property. So there's no contaminants to come off of it. Does that make sense? An inert, how would you say it? An inert material means that it can't break down. If it chemically was attacked, no other chemicals would come out of it. And that's the whole purpose of this type of landfill, is to put those things somewhere where they can be separated from, like a municipal solid waste, which really has to have a liner and keep all that stuff in check. The only thing they allow in here is things that can't contaminate, and that's the whole reason for the name, and, land clearing and inert debris landfill. So you can't put hazardous materials in this.
Why don't you get the microphone so we can hear you?
I'm missing. What goes in the landfill is what's already in the woods. It's grass clippings, it's tree trunks, and they don't even put the larger trees in there. They actually recycle those. It's stems, it's stuff that's already on the ground, in the woods. It's just coming from another location. Like we had a lot of trees come down in the neighborhood. Those can be taken over there instead of, having to just sit there in the yard and decompose. They go over there, they sell the dirt that they dig a hole to put the land clearing stuff in, and sell that dirt, pile it up, sell it, or use it to cover up the grass clippings and the trees and the leaves and things that's been brought in. So it's nothing that is not already found in nature. Nothing.
Before we move forward, it would be helpful if the witness could testify as to his job title, employer,
Credentials.
qualifications, credentials, education. That would be helpful.
Absolutely. So as I mentioned, my name's Chris Hay. I went to the University of Wisconsin-Madison and got a geological engineering degree. I've been in practice in environmental engineering for more than 30 years. And I have been in this area specifically for the last 25 years. Is that anything I left out?
Yeah, well, thank you.
Good, helpful.
Okay, there was another question about truck traffic. There would be no difference in the truck traffic expected from this operation as the previous operation. Although the area is bigger because this is a cumbersome process and it costs a lot of money to get this approved. And we're asking for, as opposed to the last time, mistakenly, we only asked for what we needed for a short period of time and had to go back and ask again. And now we're asking a third time. So we're trying to avoid that process this time. But there is no expectation that this area will get filled any differently than the previous areas or any faster. So we don't expect any more traffic.
And am I not mistaken that you're basically working in one area at a time?
Yeah.
So the the areas you've been working in previously are filled, covered up, over. Now you've opened a new one, and it's going to be the same volume. Well, the volume may increase, but the point is the operation day to day, which should be about the same as it has been. It's just now moved to a different location.
Absolutely.
Am I getting that right?
Yes, that's right. And it's not that this whole property is going to be cleared. What will happen is that this phase one will be cleared and the road to it will be built. And until that is constructed, filled, and closed, they won't move to a phase two. So that may be, like we've talked about, maybe 5 years to fill that area. And then they would work on phase two. And then that phase two area would be cleared and the road extended a little bit to provide access. And that area would be filled, and so on. So it's not that the entire property is going to be wiped out of trees and vegetation and all that. It's going to be done segmentally. And as mandatory by the state requirements, as a cell is filled and closed, it has to be revegetated and stabilized. So in this plan, in these different phases, which are all approximately 2 acres, there won't ever be more than a 2-acre area open at one time. And I guess to maybe head off some other questions, the reason there's 2 sediment facilities here is because operationally it's easier, not because there's a requirement for 2. So this one here will be built to service phases 1, 2, and 3. When phase 3 is closed, this will be closed, and the sediment facility will be moved down here to service the next couple of phases. So instead of having to capture a larger area, we capture a smaller area, keep the sediment trap smaller.
And I have one other, just, yes?
We have one question back here with Ray.
Yeah, I just wanted, before we leave this truck business, I just wanted to ask this one final thing. And I wasn't aware of the recycling component, but so can you just describe when a truck pulls in, dump truck, where just what happens and how does this sorting take place? And then what finally finds its way into the landfill? Because what I'm hearing is a recycling, a multi-stage process from the time a truck comes in. Am I hearing that correct?
Sure, yeah.
And then we'll get right to you in just a
You want
second.
to talk about it? You want me to? Okay, sure.
Yeah,
I'm Bobby
identify
Lawson.
yourself.
I'm the
Yeah.
manager of the landfill. Truck comes in, we see what he's got, and then decipher what it is in the truck he's got. And if it's something we want to mulch and turn into mulch, we'll take it and dump it near the grinder. If it's going to be used for firewood, we sell firewood too, so we recycle the firewood. We also got a sawmill. So if it's straight logs, we'll cut it into boards.
All of that operation happens on the previously permitted property, which
Yes.
isn't even on this drawing. It's to the south.
So if a truck comes in with part of a gravel asphalt drive, some concrete and
It'll go
whatever,
to the
then what do you
concrete
do?
Section, we divide it into its piles, and then we recycle it and sell it.
So really, the only thing that goes in this area is anything you can't recycle.
Yeah, basically.
I got it. Okay, ma'am, you're next. I apologize.
Hi, Danielle Saley, 2745 Staple Hill Trail. Mr. Hayes, just so I'm clear, you were hired by the Lawsons to produce this plan up here, is that correct? Correct. Okay, so you are not an unbiased expert?
That argument?
Okay, great. So you're saying, in your opinion, that our groundwater is not going to be affected. Has there been an actual study to prove this?
I would say that that's not my opinion. That is.
Could you speak in the microphone?
Yeah,
Thanks.
I would say that's not my opinion. That is hydrogeology.
Okay. So then you also said that runoff should occur more upstream on East Bellows Creek, correct?
I'm not sure where you're going, but no, I wasn't talking about runoff. I was talking about groundwater.
Okay, all right. Well, okay, so I'm still not convinced that the groundwater is going to be okay, but there's another concern we have with our community well. And that concern is, and again, this proposal takes your site here right up to our community well. I'm a little baffled as to why this map was used. This is an old map. The plots aren't right, the owners aren't right, and it certainly does not show the existence of a well that services 54 homes. So why was this excluded from this proposal? And did you consider that LCIDs and clear cutting increase opportunities for flooding? These facilities are already in flood zones. If we have increased flooding, what happens to these facilities that service all of us? I'll tell you what, I asked Aqua when I talked to them yesterday, they were never notified. No one told Aqua this was happening until some of us residents called. And I asked the gentleman, his name's Randy Simmons, what happens if our well house gets submerged? Will it work? He said, absolutely not. So are these things you guys have considered in your proposal?
Yes, absolutely. Just as Mr. Murphy stated, everything on this plan meets all the UDO requirements, and everything on there has been verified by not only their department, but we have an erosion and sedimentation control plan that's going through approval that must meet approval before any of this can happen. So it's been addressed by all appropriate authorities.
Other questions? Sorry.
How do you how is it determined all this prior to any of the trees being removed, any construction being done? This is an assumption, correct? So you're predicting what the rain might be next week, next month, in a year, 6 months, 100-year flood, something of that nature? The thing is this, you're at the high valley, it goes down in the valley, water runs down. There's trees, there's stumps, there's all sorts of things that prevent it at the moment, which makes the flood zone smaller. So you're saying with an assumption that it's not going to get larger?
No, I'm not saying that. I'm saying there will be an approved erosion and sedimentation control plan that meets all the local and state requirements.
Mr. Bessie, Commissioner Bessie.
Yes, thanks. Two questions, one for Mr. Hayes. Did I understand correctly in summary presentation that at no time will more than 2 acres be permitted to be unvegetated in the site?
It depends on what you're talking about. In the borrow area, there's a limit to 1 acre that will be cleared area. And I'm saying that operationally, they will work approximately a 2 acre area at a time, and then it'll be closed and revegetated.
All right, so.
Does that answer your question?
Potentially
I don't know that there's
up
a
to.
requirement or any kind of requirement or statute saying that they can only have 2 acres. Is that what you're asking?
It was my understanding, perhaps from Mr. Murphy, that there was a rolling limit for the number of acres that could be disturbed.
Again, I don't believe there's a statutory or an ordinance requirement. The use is LCID greater than 2 acres. I'm going to come back and clarify something that I misspoke on whenever I did speak. But, you know, essentially there's not, I believe operationally they're talking to having around a 2 acre site per cell, but it could be slightly over 2 acres, it could be slightly under 2 acres, but there's no cap that I'm aware of by the state that limits the amount that could be open at one time. I do, and Chris did speak whenever he got up, and I did misspeak. The total amount of the borrow and the LCID combined is 20.59 acres, but the LCID, the 5 cells, total 10.23 acres. So that's in the staff report. I misspoke and said that would be 20 acres of LCID. The LCID and borrow site combined is 20.59 acres.
All right, thank you.
I can say, if I will, the state permit on the previous areas limited it to 5 acres, but operationally, like I said, it'll be a 2 acre area. And if you look at the drawing and as I mentioned with the erosion control, the way it's set up, we'll only have 3 cells before the first one's closed. So operationally, you couldn't possibly have more than 6 acres open at one time if that's what you wanted to do. But that doesn't really make sense to do it that way. That would be more work on their part.
Thank you. Sir, this is probably a question for you, and I don't believe I caught your name. Bobby
Lawson.
Mr. Lawson. I had asked about hours of operation. Mr. Murphy indicated that the state code would limit it in a residential area to 7 to 7. What in practice are your regular operational hours?
Wintertime hours are 8 to 5, and summertime hours are 7:30 to 5.
Thank you.
Are there other questions of the speakers who have spoken? Yes.
This is for Mr. Lawson. This is from your previous talk on the last commission meeting. You mentioned that you have been out working on Saturdays and Sundays to prepare this land. And I'd just like to know, before this special use permit is voted on, how much ballpark do you have in this setting up this new property, both on the engineering fees and your diesel? Don't count your sweat equity. Oh, Charles Campbell, Horse Creek Court.
I have no idea how much we got invested in him. It's I know it's up there, and as far as fuel costs, if I was working on a Saturday or Sunday over there, it was probably a couple hours at the most. And so you're probably talking about $100 for a couple hours for fuel. But I don't do the billing.
Got it.
Or the money part.
Any other questions? I see another hand, yes.
Danielle Saley, 2745 Stable Hill Trail. Mr. Lawson, I'm a little confused. We haven't been in the neighborhood very long, but we do hear every day the current equipment that you run, which is approximately half a mile away, right? Am I correct in that? The distance between our neighborhood and your current site?
That or further.
Yeah, so we hear it, and we hear it past these hours that you're talking about, and we hear it on the weekends. So I'm a little confused by your statement.
Would you like to answer some of that?
Sure, go ahead.
Yeah, well, we closed the operation down at 5, but that's so we can finish up for the night and be ready for the next day. I'm sure you have heard it after 5, but that's our hours. We still got to finish, just like most restaurants close at 9:30. The dishwasher guy's going to be there till 11. You know, so. Oh yeah, we're open on Saturdays from 8 to 2. I'm probably doing maintenance.
Mr. Chair? All right, yes, yes.
Mr. Lawson, when you're talking about the after closure operations, are they the activities that take place on your existing site on Piney Grove Road? Like the grinding, for example?
Yes, sir. Is it down in here? It's on. It's at the site right now. Nothing's over there.
Do you have any plans to relocate those operations to further into the site?
We will have to, because when the permit that we filled up right now shuts down, the recycling facility shuts down. They kind of run together. I mean, they correspond with each other. You can't do one without the other.
Thank you.
Good. Yes, sir.
Yeah, just a quick question.
Your
Mark
name
Carindel, 2716 Stable Hill Trail in Macola Downs. That was pointed out a little bit ago. We can hear what's taking place at the current site, and that's probably half a mile to 3/4 of a mile, depending on where you live in our development. We can hear it now, and it's going to be coming to within a few hundred feet of where we live in the future, should this entire plan be approved. And I'm just saying, we hear it now at half a mile away, and I think that the noise is going to really have an impact on the property values, because who's going to want to buy a house with a bunch of noise going on, nearby? So that's my point.
Perhaps, Mr. Lawson, would you have any desire that we just had a conversation about the issue about noise and what it is now, and that as your work moves eastward, will the noise be worse? And it's kind of your opinion, and to address the issue of noise.
I can't say yes or no. The equipment can be heard, I'm sure. But like I said, if they hear it after 5, it is something that has to be done to get ready for the next day, or I'm servicing something. Can I show you these pictures?
Sure.
While he's going up, just a reminder to the folks who want to speak in opposition, you're going to actually get a chance to do the same thing that the other folks are doing. So if it's a question, ask the question, but if it's more of a comment, you can do it at that time.
We need to, if we're presenting evidence, we need to show it to everyone.
Show it to everybody. That's good. I thought you were just going to pass.
And you'll need to leave.
And we have a little picture thing that you can do it, and maybe some guy to assist him so he can.
We'll need you to leave those behind afterward, for the record.
Let me just figure this out. She just gave it to me. this is a neighborhood that is being built, added on to their neighborhood right now. And if you want to talk about loud, that this place is huge. It's 90 acres. They cleared it in the last year and a half, I believe, 2 years. And they had, I would say, multiple motor graders that are really big, bigger than anything I've got. Had no mufflers on them, beepers beeping nonstop, and I'm sure I got blamed for 100% of them. They've been, the people that come cleared the land, that's all they did. They didn't haul none of the brush off. They've got a humongous pile of brush over there. They've been burning this for the last 3 to 4 months. The other day I was accused of somebody hearing my tracks. And I said, sir, we haven't moved nothing in 4 days. And like I said, my kids live in that neighborhood. So when I go pick them up, I get to see this big bonfire, and there's a traco out there going to the brush pile and tracking it all the way over here to this big bonfire. And they've been burning this stuff for 4 months, like I said. And and I'm getting blamed for the noise. So, and nobody, like they said, they brung up a pump station. That thing runs 24/7, and it's a constant hum. Where I'm at, I go deer hunting all the time over there, where the landfill's gonna be. And all you hear is, the whole day. I mean, you talking about annoying, but that's the pipe. They still got to come in and lay all this pipe. I mean, they're going to be hearing noise for, how long is it going to take to fill in a 90-acre clearing for houses?
We're sort of moving beyond what our point at hand, but.
Okay, well, I mean,
I do hear you.
I'm not even functional, and I'm getting blamed for it.
I appreciate you sharing that. Could you just leave those 2 pictures over here with our attorney? We would have that as a part of our information that was presented, which would be great. Now, let me ask you this. Let's have this speaker, and here I want you to put your thinking hats on. Is there anyone else who would like to speak in favor? Do it. And if anyone wants to speak, so we can begin to close it out. But yes, sir.
One of the main things was mentioned is, Andrew Saley, 2745 Stable Hill, with the gentleman that was just speaking on the noise levels. I kind of got a little bleeding heart for it. I'm in the trucking industry. One of the many things is decibel levels, so on and so forth. Jake breaks, so on. Towns, communities have restrictions of the noise. There's a long list of what the decibel levels are of heavy equipment running from 7:30 in the morning till 5:30 at night. There's so many locations I personally go to around this country where I can't idle a truck, certain places, so on and so forth, because of the decibel levels. Why? Because everybody in this room, all you gentlemen and ladies up there on that board, don't want to hear it. Now, I understand the construction that we got going on up there to answer his concern, and if he's being blamed for things that are going on, that's sad. But the thing is that's temporary. This year is 25 years. Every day, every week, every month that moves on, the noise gets clearer, louder, and louder. Hollering down through the valley, which we all know you're filling in a valley. And you yourself just said that every time you finish a cell, you move with the cell. Where the cells go? Closer to our property lines. Noise, pollution. We all don't like it.
I would ask that at this point, the cross-examination needs to be limited to questions. There will be an opportunity for the opponents to present their opinions later.
It's good. And a proponent, here we go.
First off, my name is Clifford Pierce, and I want to ask for permission to give my opinion on this because I was a neighbor to the area. I lived on Lawson Acres Drive. I have recently sold this property, and I know I'm under oath. So I want to make that clear because I could be viewed as someone that is giving an opinion that it doesn't matter in my life anymore. And all I can speak on is the past and my experience with the Lawsons and the landfill. And just asking if I do have permission to
Sure,
give.
go ahead.
Like I said, I lived at the end of Lawson Acres Drive, which is across from where the new site is going to be. And the land that is around me is loaned and operated by the Lawsons. And I was there from 2012 to probably a couple months ago. And everything that they did in the area was always kept neat and clean. And going back to David Lawson's, his thinking of the neighbor instead of himself. Anytime he done anything around my property, he always, if the law said 5 foot, he did it 10 foot away. That was always the way it was done. And, but it was really nice, in my opinion, to have a place that was recycling, that wasn't filling up our landfill, a place where we could go and get mulch, we could go and get firewood. And in my opinion, it was an asset. And it will be the part that they did feel that they're moving away from. It has taken them nearly 30 years to do so. I can't speak for exact how many square foot or acres, but it seems to me like it took them 30 years to go through 3 acres of property. I am 51. By the time they get to that neighborhood, I probably won't be around to worry about it. And just going off past experience on how long it takes them to move closer and closer that the guy is concerned about. And again, I'm not a neighbor anymore, so maybe I should not voice my opinion about what the future holds. But if they decide to sell the property, there's no guarantees that who buys it won't put a junkyard, won't raise swine there, or build chicken houses there. That's all things that is done agriculturally in our area. And even the state uses their sand rock because of the good grade of their sand rock. And it's not above our scope to think that the state could not purchase that also. And I think when the state gets in trouble with something, they're probably going to do what they want to an extent. And again, I just want the court to know that I'm no longer a neighbor. I'm not doing anything trying to be dishonest or give my opinion where it may not matter.
Let me ask you one question. Do you
Yes,
have any
sir.
difficulty selling your property?
Absolutely not. I didn't even have to list it. There were people in line. I had phone numbers of people that wanted my property.
I hear you. Thank you.
Yes, sir.
Any questions for our last speaker here? Now, there anybody else like to say anything regarding proponents? And then we'll move if there's any other closing comments from opponents. We've had some good discussion. I've learned something. Appreciate it. No questions? Thank you very much. Any other questions to speak in favor? Anyone else who would like to speak against an opposition? In this case, you can just come forward. Come right up again. Thank you.
Got it. First of all, thank you for this, right? Thank you for hearing us. My
Could you
name's
please introduce yourself and give your name and address?
Roscoe Luce, 2757 Stable Hill Trail. That's in McCullough Downs. Okay. I Googled this morning, and there are 5 other LCIDs within 15 miles of this. Okay, so if this does not get approved, it would not be a devastating impact to the community, to the need to future development. I don't know, to his point, what their load capacity is, right? But there are other LCIDs relatively close. I was unaware that at this stage of the game, I guess the onus is now on me to prove whether or not this would be a substantial impact to my property value. If you look at where my house is, right, I'm ground zero. I'm the closest one to this. I believe the permitted distance is 162 feet from my property. If you look out my back door, this entire thing is right behind me. If I need to go get commercial appraiser, have them do comps, have them do all this, I'll be happy to do it, right? But I believe this would have a substantial impact to my property value. I asked the commissioners, would you pay full retail price, full market price for a house that has a landfill behind it that's going to run for the next 25 years? Right? And I know that substantial is subjective, right? But it's a big deal. I think I can help clear the air. There's so many people that don't understand. Most of the people here, it's about the noise and seeing it, right? They don't want to see it. They don't want to hear it. McCullough Downs is a very quiet neighborhood, right? It's our whole area where this is being proposed is neighborhoods, small farms, large farms, right? It's a nice place. To the Lawson's credit, they do run a very good operation, right? I've used it, right? They keep it clean. They do a nice job. I think this picture shows their current operation. That's in the red. I can point, I'm sorry. This is their current operation, right? This is McCullough Downs. We hear it now, okay? We hear it all day, every day. We hear it on the weekends. We hear it late, right? It's far off in the distance. I knew it when I bought the property. I accepted the fact it was there. The assumption was someday it would fill up and stop and they would build a whole bunch of houses behind us. The real issue here, what I need to impress upon the commissioners is what they are doing is they want to build on one side of a small property or a small valley. The other side is McCullough Downs. Right now, they are far off removed. There's other hills and valleys, and it helps with the sound. But if you look at the topology, this whole LCID landfill is on one side, and here's McCullough Downs. So for me, it's really the noise. It's going to be that much closer, and all of this is going to be in this little small valley. When we talk about the operation and what is it going to look like, well, this is a great map right here. If you look at his current operation, what does that look like? And what will the site look like when he starts operations there? You can see it's open, it's dirt, right? It's been cleared. That's the two things, right? For most of the people here, if we don't hear it and we don't see it, then everyone's happy. But we are very afraid that because of the proximity and because of the topology, right, it's going to be very noisy and it's going to be very disruptive to this really nice existing community. I'm not trying to stop the Lawsons. I get it. They have this property. They want to do their work. But I believe there are better options. I think that not going so big, do we really want to give a permit for 25 years? I think that if we scale it back and possibly relocate some of this, right? It's far enough away from us. It's not too close to Pine Knolls, right? Everyone could be happy.
Sir, if you don't mind, I'm not sure if this map will tell me what I'm needing, but I need to know where your residence is on this map. And
Yes.
if this one isn't helpful, there was one that was given to our county attorney that may be helpful for me too as well.
That's me,
Okay.
right? So you see my point, right? This whole side is going down, everything is going up.
Right. Okay, thank you.
Would anyone like to ask the speaker a question?
If I may, or
Chairman, if I have one more question, if I
Ma'am.
may, please. I heard, and I just wanted to be sure that what I heard, it's 162 feet from that, your area?
it is 162 feet.
Okay, fair enough.
Yep.
Thank.
Oh, got another comment.
Hey, Roscoe.
Hi.
So I do have a question in regards to what you're saying, because you're suggesting that they move the site from where they're currently proposing to another location on their property. And I know you've discussed this with me and showed me a topography map and explained to me why this would make sense. And it totally made sense to me, especially since you're an engineer, you understand these type of things. Could you please explain to the board better how they could pick a better site than the current one they have?
I've said it before, valley, valley. Once you get up to the top of that property that the Lawsons have, there's other smaller swells that they could do this operation and they could fill in. And again, because it's buffered by hills on both sides, right, it really helps attenuate the noise. It's the fact with this current configuration, there's no buffer, there's no hills. It is one side of the hill, here's us.
Any comments or questions to that, or response?
This is Bobby Lawson. You say there ain't no buffer in between?
No.
It's a 100-foot buffer. The flood zone is one buffer.
Right.
Then you got another 100-foot buffer that ain't gonna be touched.
But there's no buffer physically from a topology standpoint, right? You are on one side of a hill, here's McCullough Downs on the other.
We're starting at a 2-acre site.
I understand.
That's over a half a mile
understand.
away from you.
It's not that far, right?
You're just going from the property line. You're not going from where the landfill actually is. I mean, we're starting way
I understand.
back.
You're starting up here.
I will be back there
Right.
if I even live that long. You know, it's at least 6 to 7 years per 2 acres. I mean, it just depends. I mean,
So let
like
me
I
ask
said,
you this, right? Why go for 25 years? Why not go for 5 or 10 years? Try it. If no one complains,
You see how long, I've been trying to get this permit for 2 years.
I understand.
That's why, because it takes this long and it takes this much money. Like, I wish I knew, I could tell y'all how much that engineer costs me. But, yeah, and, I mean, Chris, can you tell us just what one of them maps costs? Please.
It's going to be a wild generalization if I did, but let's just say that there's tens of thousands of dollars involved in this process.
This is a topology map taken off of Google, right? I don't claim to be, right, an architect or a, drafts person. At a high level, you can see that is this fill area. And if you look at it, you can see it is a big hill, right? And it's a big hollow. And right on the other side is the uphill side, which is all McCullough Downs. Right now, if you look at where his operations are, right? We've got all that distance. We've got all those other hills. We've got all the other trees and, right, land between us. That's the real concern. If they do these operations here, we get to listen to heavy equipment, right? Think of a strip mine or a giant commercial operation going for the next 25 years. Would that impact my property value? I believe so, and I'm willing to hire someone to prove it.
Any other questions for Speaker? Any other comments? Anyone else who wants to speak in opposition? I think we can, got one more?
Thank you.
Thank you.
So my name is Daniel Lawson. I am the owner and broker in charge of Lawson Realty Group. I think it's probably important to note there are a lot of Lawsons in the room. I do not have any affiliation to that I personally know of the Lawsons in the landfill operation. I had the pleasure of helping two of the McCullough Downs homeowners purchase their house in January of this year. When they called me earlier this week and kind of walked me through the process and plans, I kind of told them, while I don't feel qualified enough to speak on the environmental potentials of that, as for the market values of the homes and things like that, 100% that has a negative effect and has a substantial injury on their market value. When we work with buyers purchasing houses, almost more importantly than the interior conditions of the house is what's exterior. Those are things we cannot change. And so, when I look at these maps and obviously the long term, I can't necessarily speak on behalf of the subdivisions other than the one I'm comfortable with that I help them buy in. These plans almost put it in their backyard to the finalization of that. And while I did hear you speak on, people were lining up at your door to buy your property in McCullough Downs.
No, sir, I'm not in McCullough Downs. You got that incorrect.
Okay.
I'm in Lawson.
I understand. Okay. We're coming out of one of the hottest real estate markets this country's ever seen. There's people lining up at pretty much every property, in a sense. I think about the future home values of those that this does affect. I cannot imagine the kind of personal impact and opinion when you explain to a potential home buyer there is a commercial landfill essentially in their backyard. As to the sounds and noise ordinance and things of that, I do not have an opinion to speak on that. I do not live there. However, that certainly plays a part in market values and assessments of their house. I think while she mentioned this does not have an impact directly on the home values, in terms of tax values, 100% agree. However, the market values of these houses and what people are going to be willing to pay in the future, given these plans when they evaluate what their backyard may potentially be, in my personal professional opinion, that 100% has a negative substantial injury impact.
Chairman, if I may, I do have a question for Mr. Lawson.
Yes, ma'am.
Mr. Lawson, when you say that the home values are being affected, to a tune of what? And have you seen those values dwindle?
Yes, so I do not have a set number. I can speak on that. I guess we're speaking in generalizations in the event this is passed and potential home buyers potentially buying that house. I think it becomes a major deterrent that turns people away from potentially buying that house. Or if it's not a deterrent, it certainly lowers the value of what they're willing to pay to live there.
Have you seen that in your recent sales?
So have I seen that directly? I can speak here 100%. When I was actually showing Andrew and Danielle a property, we found out later on that property was built on a prior landfill. It was located in Thomasville. Winding Creek Golf Course was built on top of that landfill. We were looking at land beside it. It had a 100% impact on whether or not they wanted to buy that land. That was actually what deterred them away from it. Can those be compared? I'm not sure, but it was certainly the effect of a commercial landfill at one point in time.
Fair enough. Thank you.
Any other comments or questions for this speaker?
Come on, we've got to close this down.
Are you registered with the state as a land appraiser?
I am not, no, sir.
Would a seller be required to divulge that there's a landfill behind the place they're trying to sell?
So, in a sense, if it was a noise ordinance and something as a material fact that needed to be disclosed, yes, they would. Just disclosing that it is a commercial landfill, I do not believe that that is something that needs to be disclosed.
Matt?
Yeah, please.
Mr. Lawson, you mentioned a negative impact on prospective sale of mentioning that it was built on a former landfill. What was the kind of landfill that it was built on?
To the best of my knowledge, I believe that was a former waste landfill.
What kind of waste?
I believe garbage, I want to make sure what I'm telling you is correct. I believe it was a former garbage landfill.
So it's what we would call today as a sanitary landfill. Basically, it's garbage coming from.
Correct.
All right, thank you, sir.
Correct.
Other questions of the speaker? And is there anyone else that would like to speak? Oh, got one more.
Good afternoon, commissioners. I want to thank you all. Some of you, this is new, this is your first year. We have others of you who have serviced our county for decades, and thank you very much for your commitment and dedication to the people in this county. With that being said, I am wondering, since I was, correct me if I'm wrong, the email that I sent you all, you were not allowed to read. Is that correct? I have 7 copies here. Can I give you a copy of my email to consider?
Sure.
Mr. Chairman, if we could get a name.
Oh, I didn't say my name? I'm sorry. I've said it so many times. Danielle Saley, 2745 Stable Hill Trail. So, wow. First of all, I'm not real happy with this proposal, and it's kind of sad. You know, when this was talked about, our neighborhood couldn't even be named. It's like we're not even being considered. There's no pictures in any of this presentation of this proposal from our side and from our view. So why are we not being considered? No mention of our community well, no mention of our wastewater facility. And, you know, was it Chris Hayes? Chris Hayes said, well, you know, it's not going to affect the groundwater. Well, what about flooding? Do we really know that this floodplain that we already have is not going to be additionally flooded with more water? You could clearly go online and find lots of articles that talk about the effects of clear cutting, and one of the major effects is additional flooding. This also applies, which you can find it online, to LCIDs. They increase the potential for flooding. If you've seen on the topographical maps, this is a valley, and it runs down right there where our well is. So, I mean, I'm not an expert on groundwater, but everybody can see the effects of, I mean, we've all seen, correct, flash flooding and how water can so quickly build up in mass amounts. And what happens when these facilities that service our 54 homes get submerged? And that needs to be considered. As I said earlier, I spoke to a gentleman at Aqua. His name's Randy Simmons. He told me our well house and the equipment in there will not work if it gets submerged. So these are issues of water quality for the people who live there. These are issues of public safety. If this water system gets compromised in any way, it endangers public safety and health. And I will tell you that a very similar case like this has already occurred in the state. In Vance County at the end of 2020, and the decision then was made in February of 2021, an LCID landfill was turned down, and it was turned down for issues and concerns over water quality and significant elevation changes in terrain, because it was the same situation where they wanted to fill in a valley that at the end of the valley was a floodplain just like us. When I turn to the part here that describes in a news article what this would look like, said the LCID would be built within a half mile of 60 homes. All right, so these people on this board in Vance turned down an LCID that was going to be within a half mile. We already have that. This is talking, in our situation, putting it in our backyard. all right? So this would be built half mile of 60 homes on roughly 80 acres of steep, rugged, and forested terrain that bottoms out at Long Creek, which is a tributary to Tabbs Creek and the Tar River. All right, here we are, valley, right? This is going down a valley, there's hills. In our situation, steep, roughly, the whole property is 70 acres, well, roughly 80 acres, bottoms out at a floodplain with a tributary. East Bellows Creek is a tributary to Blues Creek Lake, okay, Blues Creek Lake. Almost identical situation to what we have here. And as I said, the board here in Vance County turned this down. They turned it down. The expert witnesses talked about increased flooding, about how if the land is cleared for the LCID, the trees and vegetation that currently hold the dirt in place and control flood waters will be gone, leaving exposed hillsides that would turn to mud, okay? The person who this opinion was, her name is Jill Howe. She's the Pamlico River Keeper. She is a graduate of Yale University in environmental management, okay? And she said this situation with hillsides going down to a flood zone is not ideal for this type of development for an LCID, and it would increase flooding. So when the board got all of this information in Vance County and these parameters that y'all are going to determine yes or no to, that these important questions, right? They voted no to several of them. One issue being the use or development is located, designed, and proposed to be operated so as to maintain or promote the public health or safety, okay? Everybody said this is false, all right? Over concerns about water quality and significant elevation changes in terrain. They also said that the use or development is located, designed, and proposed to be operated so as to maintain or enhance the value of adjoining or abutting properties, or they considered the use as a public necessity. All of these people voted no, that was not true, okay? Issues with property values being down because of it, issues with this is not a public necessity. And as Mr. Luce said, it is not when we have several other locations throughout the county. They also said that the use or development will be in harmony with the area where it's located. They all thought that that was not true as well, okay? Again, similar situation. You're more than welcome to have these papers and the news article that I pulled these facts from. And the attorney?
Please. Mm-hmm. Yes.
So I would ask the board to consider these things. Consider it, this, again, was very similar. That's why it applies. And, this, I just found out about this on Sunday. I was on vacation. I came home from vacation. I just found out we are doing the very best we can in our neighborhood. Nobody in this neighborhood wants this. Unfortunately, many people in my neighborhood thought emailing you all was sufficient enough to oppose this. We found out last night that, I think it was your response, Dr. Martin, that emails would not be considered. And it was too late for us to go walk our neighborhood and let the neighbors know this. And so I'm sure that if many of these neighbors who emailed you knew that their words would not go on record today, they would happily have printed the email, given it to us so we could bring it here, carry it in today, and submit it to you for you to review and put on record. But we were not given the time to do that. And I'm hoping that enough questions have been raised, especially when it comes to our well and everything like that, that you will, at the end, determine that this is not appropriate, a not appropriate area for this LCID to go into. Tell Mr. Lawson he can consider other areas that will not affect our neighborhood on his property. But at least at the end of the day, would you please at least give us time to talk more to our neighbors, let them know more, educate more. We are scrambling. The few of us that have been working on this, we are scrambling to try to build this opposition. We haven't had the time. That's what I'm asking today, and I appreciate you so much for taking the time to listen to my concerns, to put yourself in my shoes and think about how this would feel if you were me, right? Thank you very much.
I think I'm absolutely, I'm sorry. I was going to say, I think I'm absolutely clear on what you said. In plain, simple terms, vote yes or no.
Just want to show something one more time. Like I said, they're worried about the well. This was the 90 acres that they just cleared for this neighborhood, new neighborhood.
Could you please identify yourself and speak into the microphone?
This was the 90 acres that they just cleared for the new neighborhood.
Identify yourself.
Bobby Lawson, the manager of the LICD landfill. They was strip cutting this thing for like the last year and a half. And then they brung in them motor graders and, I mean, they cleared that whole thing off. So if they're worried about their well water, why didn't they stop all this from happening? But when we're talking about the erosion control map, I'm sorry, I'm off that. Where is it? How do you move this? How do I make the picture move?
What are you trying to get to? I'm sorry.
Like the thing of the landfill. Like right there. There you go. Okay. And they're still talking, we're going to have so much stripping land. Like we said, we're only going to have 2 acres at one time opened. And you start back here filling up. The only water that's going to be going down in here is the natural rainwater. Once you start filling in a landfill, you do not want water in it. Water actually will combust with the stumps if it gets mixed wrong. So when they're talking about flooding, once we start this thing, we divert the other water to go the opposite way, and it'll actually go into this pond down here we built. So all the erosion will be going into our pond. The only water going through here towards their well or creek is natural rainwater. So I just wanted to make that clear.
Any other responses?
Doesn't natural rainwater create flooding?
Yeah, but it's still going to have to go through the woods that's in there. So
Yes, but the woods are eventually going to disappear. When we look at your current site and it shows open dirt, there's no trees, it's just dirt.
just on the 2-acre site, that we've got cleared. After we leave that, we plant grass and start mowing. So the only spot, that everything's going to have grass on it. There ain't nothing going to be dirt. And all these trees are going to be here until we get to open the next site. So there's going to be trees until we get there.
Okay, but your current site has been operating for how long?
27 years.
27 years. Does it have trees and grass on it?
If Mr. Luce could answer that. I tried to show him the landfill we was shutting down, and it's completely covered with about 2 foot of grass, nice green grass. We got buffers all over the place. I mean, trees everywhere.
But for 27 years, it's been open and no trees.
There's trees all over the place.
So all you have to do, I'm sorry, Roscoe Luce, 2757 Stable Hill Trail. All you have to do is look at this. Look at his current site, top down, look at it, right? That's what that entire hill is going to look like.
So you didn't see the old landfill that we just shut down?
That's it.
No, sir,
That's your work.
That is a satellite map of how many years ago? I mean, he was just there at the site, and we tried to show him the old landfill, and apparently he didn't look down there because it is covered in grass. Green, nice grass. And this is working facility right now. I mean, it can't be grass if you're driving over it. I mean, and anybody's more than welcome to come and see that.
We did, a young man standing up in the back. Would you like to speak?
Yves Blamodon, 2720 Stable Hill Trail. I just want to make some comments about things that have been said about the large property, which was Eric McCullough's property, the 90 acres. I believe it's closer to 75. They had the property up for sale for a long time, and he got very sick, so they cleared the land, not for building, for the timber. Garmin bought the property from the McCulloughs, and they've only actually clear-cutted about 20, maybe 15, 20 acres at the most, close to the, excuse me, Bethel Church and Pumpkin Ridge. They're doing it in phases. They're going to abut their property at some point in the future, and you're going to have another community with a problem on their hands, not just us. And I just wanted to clarify that.
Mr. Chairman, I think both sides have had opportunities to present points. If there's anyone additional from the opposition who has something new to present, you might ask for that.
Any new comments?
I have one more new comment, and then I'll sit down. It's my impression from what Mr. Lawson has said that he's blaming a lot of the noise and stuff on that new community that is going up on Pumpkin Ridge. I know I have not lived in the neighborhood, but for a few months, but I can tell you, and if you'd like to ask some of my neighbors that have been there for years, that prior to that new development going up, the noise has been constant. The noise that they know they are hearing is from Mr. Lawson's current LCID. So for him to blame, to use this as a scapegoat for his noise that he creates, I think is being very ingenuous because, as again, please, board, ask the question of the neighbors who have been there longer. Is this noise they're hearing from the new development, or is it something you've heard for the 16 years you've lived there? Thank you very much.
Thank you.
May I ask a question?
Yes.
Yes, Ms. Sally. Ms. Sally? Ms. Sally? You've been speaking, if I may, thank you. You've been speaking about the private treatment facility and a well.
Yes.
These are part of McCullough Downs, is that correct?
That's correct. They're managed by Aqua NC.
All right, and the well is up creek from where the extra stormwater would be discharged by the proposed new LCID, is it? What about, are these, I'm sorry.
Yes.
The question, are these facilities located in the current floodplain or
Yes, they are.
above?
Or right on the border of them.
They're on the border of the current floodplain.
Well, it's hard for me to say. I think there was one map that kind of showed the access road that comes down. I don't think it was that one, but or maybe it was. Let's see. So at the end of that access road is where that well is. So it is, kind of right there. It might be halfway in the floodplain, it may be not. It would be nice if the people who did this proposal actually placed the well on there and took it into consideration, because then we don't have to conjecture where we think it is.
What about the treatment facility? Where is it located?
The treatment facility is right over there. I'm sorry. Here, do you know? Because he would know better than I do.
All right, well, yes, sir, if you could answer that, please. Thank you.
Roscoe Luce, 2757 Stable Hill Trail. The treatment facility is in this lot right here. The well is at the end of this little road right here, and then you kick over, I would imagine that dot is
So it isn't
probably the well itself,
All right, so the treatment facility is located out of the floodplain, is that correct?
in the floodplain.
You were indicating, I thought you were indicating the,
That,
He wants the treatment
I'm
facility.
sorry,
facility.
treatment facility is right there.
And it's at the upper part of or the back part of that parcel.
all right.
It's going to be in that lot right there.
Yeah, so that's the floodplain.
Do you happen to know the clearage from the current flood levels?
Are you asking if it's in the 100-year?
Yes.
It is within the 100-year floodplain.
It's, the facility itself is
Sir.
within the 100-year
Yes, sir.
floodplain. And including the pumps there?
Yes, sir.
The
You
whole
can see
operation?
the, all of these houses right here at the end of the road are in that 100-year floodplain, including the facility, the treatment facility, which is right here.
In fact, that whole lot seems to
Yep.
be in there.
That lot was designated for their facility.
Okay, thank you, sir.
Okay, I
anything
think we
else?
are now ready to declare that the public hearing is closed. Okay, very good. Are we prepared for a motion? Is there a motion?
Mr. Chairman, I'd be happy to make a motion. I would like to clarify one more time that this is very different from most zonings. I have been here a few years, and very often have I ever had to sit here with this type of zoning, and where we cannot talk to the public, we cannot come and visit you. Mr. Plyler did, but he was not supposed to. The attorney has adamantly told us that we cannot communicate with you all. So if I didn't answer emails and phone calls, and some of you I know personally, I could not answer your phone call, and I'm sorry. I move that the Board of Commissioners find that the proponent has proved the 4 required findings of fact, and that the order attached hereto granting the special use permit be approved.
Is there a second?
A second.
Second from Commissioner McDaniel. Is there any discussion further?
If I may, yes. Brief discussion. One thing that we have to emphasize is that in a special use permit of this type, we are bound to make a decision based on the evidence that is presented to us. So that I cannot, for example, consider the example of Vance County and what specific circumstances may have been in effect that led a Vance County board to come to a particular conclusion. We can't make a decision based on possible effects in 30 years of an expanded landfill. We don't have the evidence. We have to make a decision based on the information that is in front of us. Thank you.
Mr. Chairman, I have some questions and observations. Chris and the environmental person, I can't remember your name. There's been a lot of things said, and
I'll just point out that the public hearing has been closed, and so this is the time for the board to deliberate.
can we not have discussion?
You can discuss with us, yes.
You can have discussion among yourselves, yes.
Okay, well, if I talk, the people out there's going to have to listen. They don't say anything, but unless they put their earplugs in. Board members, y'all just listen to me, and if y'all want to listen, you can. If you don't, okay. I'll kind of go down the list that I've had here. It won't necessarily be in the correct order. There's been discussion of clear cutting. If this is approved and he were to start clear cutting, I think he'd be shut down quick. And there is in going by there yesterday, went to the location. I didn't see anybody anywhere. except some no trespassing signs, and I ignored them, and I went on down the road and didn't go all the way to the end, but I got to the top of the hill where I could see down in the valley, and I couldn't see the water flowing in the creek, but I could see it because I was according to the topo map, about 100 feet from where I was at to the bottom. And well, I'd gone around, been quite a while since I'd been in the area. From where I'm at, you got to want to go over there to get there, because there's several twists and turns from where I'm at, Warren Road and Bethel Church Road, and then Pumpkin Ridge Road, and first time I'd ever been in McCullough Downs. I go all the way down to all the way down to the end of the street, almost. I didn't go to the turnaround. I backed in somebody's driveway, and I go on out and then around Pumpkin Ridge Road and Piney Grove Road, and I've been through those places a few times. That's the reason I can remember all of them. And I turned left on Piney Grove to go by the landfill area, and just to the right, I didn't go on up the road, but there was a logging operation. I could see the equipment sitting on the road, but I couldn't. If it was getting late and I wasn't quite interested enough, normally I'd have probably went just to see what was going on, but I would expect it's probably clear cutting going on there, but it's probably large timber. So I go on down the road, and then I turn into the landfill, and when I got down to where that dozer was sitting, I sort of slowed down, looked at that a little bit. That thing had a cab on it with an air condition. That would have been something back in the day. It is now. But anyway, almost, Mr. Lawson, what percent of all of that property is in woodland? It looks like the biggest part of it, but I couldn't tell. Most of it's pine woods, pine trees.
You can ask him.
Again, please don't answer that question. We're in deliberations right now.
Okay. Well, I told you earlier today, if I got too far out of line, you might have to call me down again. It was a large percent of it. I'd say it's probably 75%. I'll just make the determination myself. So, and I believe the environmental man would, there's borrow, you could only have 1 acre open. If there's trees there, if there is trees there, I guess you can open 1 acre. And then the field area, there's 5 of them, and they're different sizes. Let's just use one that's got 5 acres. The one that's got about 5 acres, Chris, can they disturb just 2? I'm sorry. My understanding is I think they can only disturb 2 acres. And the less that can be disturbed at the time is going to be better for everybody. All of the trees that can be left is going to be somewhat like these road barriers to knock the sound down. So I could go on, but and you are doing recycling, and he's indicated that when the fill is done, if they have to put bar on it, they do, and then they'll either plant grass or back in trees. And I'm not sure who I was going to ask the question, but I can't. I'm not sure whether this is regulated by the state or the county, according to the environmental person, state must have right much regulation. And one of the things in this kind of process, it's not the best, in my opinion, it is not the best way for a decision to be made. To me, I think there's some other details that need to be looked at. If, as time goes on, and the area is disturbed, is planted back in grass, that's good. That helps. That'll hold down erosion. But I guess they have. I don't know where they have the option to plant it in grass or back in plantings. That's, I guess, according to state regulations. So I could talk on, but I'll just stop there. And I've said that I think there's a few things that we ought to be able to discuss a little more, but whoever made the rules and the laws of how we do this, all the laws and regulations is not the best. So we're just working with what we're working with. Thank you.
Mr. Chairman?
Yes.
In just a few minutes, we've either made history or are about to make history, because it'll strike 4 o'clock and we've been discussing this one item for 3 hours. 2 hours. But my question is, specifically, with clarity, what is the motion?
The motion is actually to support the proponents on the landfill as the request was made. It has been seconded. We are in the discussion mode of that time.
I just wanted to make sure before we voted, everybody knew that.
Several people have made comments, and I'm ready to ask, are there any other comments?
About 45 seconds worth, and then
All righty.
I'll show it. Basically, the concerned nearby property owners have raised reasonable questions. On each of those reasonable questions raised, though, the greater weight of the evidence that is actually before us suggests that they've been satisfactorily answered. On the amount of land clearing that would be going on at a time, on the operational conditions from state regulations as well as local that would apply to the operations, on the potential hydrological impacts. So I do not criticize at all the raising of the questions, but I do note that on those reasonable questions raised, the greater weight of the evidence that is actually before us supports the proponent's request.
Any other comments?
Call the question.
Question's been called. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? There are none. Motion carries unanimously. Thank you all for being here. In fact, Vice Chair Wisenhunt asked me if we also have a couple of resolutions today, and there are a couple of people here to receive them. And before we actually have our hearings on the bond issues, I'd just like to have our resolutions, which are fairly short, to see if we could go forward with those. And in fact, I will skip to them and see if we can not take care of that. Sorry. We have a resolution actually recognizing April 2023 as Public Health Month in Forsyth County. And we do have some public health staff who are here present to receive it. I appreciate your patience. And Vice Chair Wisenhunt is going to read the motion. And if you all would come forward, that would be great, those of you from the Health Department. was a good summary. That's exactly those salient issues. I pretty much agree with this.
Are we all here? I'm sorry that this has taken so long, because we really want to recognize you all and all the special work you've done for us.
Yes.
This is a resolution recognizing April 2023 as Public Health Month in Forsyth County, North Carolina. Whereas the Forsyth County public health workforce is a critical component of our emergency response to natural and man-made disaster and widespread disease outbreak in our county, including COVID-19. Whereas our county and state public health workers have been courageous, inventive, and tireless in their work to protect our citizens from the threat of COVID-19 pandemic, while continuing to perform their other essential public health functions, oftentimes at the risk of their own safety and health. Whereas public health measures to control and eliminate infection disease, improve environmental sanitation, and promote healthy lifestyle practices have been the greatest cause of improved health status and increased life expectancy for the residents of our county and all North Carolina residents. Whereas public health plays a critical role advancing health equality and preventing chronic diseases and injuries, resulting in improved productivity and decreased health care costs for all of North Carolinians. Whereas the Forsyth County Board of Commissioners is committed to a continued emphasis on prevention in public health and to help our county and North Carolina reach a better state of health through actions outlined in the Healthy North Carolina 2030 objective. Whereas communities, local health departments, employers, hospitals and healthcare providers, individuals and families, insurers, county leaders, and policymakers, faith-based communities, and school and child care facilities must work together to identify and develop innovative solutions to health problems facing people of Forsyth County. Whereas the Forsyth County Board of Commissioners encourages all residents to recognize that public health is working to ensure all residents are protected from threats such as COVID-19, foodborne disease, injury, chronic diseases such as diabetes, heart disease, and asthma. Now therefore be it resolved that the Forsyth County Board of Commissioners hereby recognize the month of April 2023 as Public Health Month in Forsyth County and encourages its observation to all county residents and convey our deepest gratitude to public health professionals who serve our county every day. This is today, April 20th, 2023, and we thank you all so much. Of our appreciation, and would you like to say anything?
Well, I would just say thank you. I'm the luckiest health director in the state because I have the best team and the most support from the county management and the county commissioners, and I appreciate you all and appreciate this team and all they've done the last 3 years and just all they do every day to keep us promote health and improve lives. Thank you.
Thank you all so much.
Thank you.
Y'all do a great job.
And just for the record book, I'm going to take Vice Chair Wizenhut, actually, that made the motion. I'll second it. And could we just approve that resolution? All in favor, please say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Motion carries unanimously. We have a second resolution, and the second resolution is recognizing April 2023 as Child Abuse Prevention Month in Forsyth County, North Carolina. Christine Howell-Dowell, the Social Services Director, is here to receive the resolution along with several staff in T-shirts, and We appreciate your patience today, too, and you got to see a little bit of government in action, I suspect, and learn some things that you probably didn't know before you came here. So we also have Commissioner McDaniel. Would you please read the resolution?
Yes, sir. Thank you, Chairman Martin. Wherefore, in 2021, there were approximately 21,242 child maltreatment victims in North Carolina. The CDC reports that in 2022, there were approximately 4 million children maltreatment reports made in the USA. Whereas child abuse and neglect are serious problems affecting every segment of our community, and finding solutions requires input and action from everyone in our community. Whereas our children are the most valuable resource and will shape the future of the world in Forsyth County. Whereas child abuse has been a long-term psychological, emotional, and physical effects that have lasting consequences for victims of abuse. Whereas protective factors are conditions that reduce or eliminate risk and promote the social, emotional, and developmental well-being of children. Whereas effective child abuse prevention strategies succeed because of the partnerships created between child welfare, education, healthcare, community, and faith-based organizations, businesses, and law enforcement agencies. Wherefore, communities must make every effort to promote programs and activities that create strong and striving children and families. Whereas we acknowledge that we must work together as a community to increase awareness around child abuse and advocate for the social, emotional, and well-being needs of our children and families to strive in safe, stable, and nurturing environments. Wherefore, prevention services, countywide education, and proactive partnerships and productive strategies to address child abuse in our community. And whereas within Forsyth County, there are active partnerships between several partners that are proactively addressing the child abuse, including the Forsyth County Department of Social Services and Public Health, the Parenting Path, the Guardian and Enlighten Program, Family Services, Wake Forest Baptist Hospital, Novant Health, the Winston-Salem Forsyth County Schools, the Forsyth County Sheriff's Department, and the Winston-Salem Police Department, and the Forsyth County District Attorney's Office, all of which comprise of the Communities Protection Team and the Child Fatalities Prevention Team in Forsyth County. Now, Chairman, therefore, be it resolved that this Forsyth County Board of Commissioners hereby recognizes the month of April 2023 as Child Abuse Prevention Month in Forsyth County and encourages all citizens, community agencies, faith-based groups, and medical facilities to increase participation in the efforts of the Forsyth County Department of Social Services to prevent child maltreatment and strengthen the communities in which we live, adopted on this day, the 20th of April, 2023.
Second the motion.
All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Motion carries unanimously.
Thank you. And if you'd like to have some remarks.
Yes, great, thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, everyone, for recognizing. Thank you to not only the commissioners, Chantel, Dudley, and Damian. We just want to say thank you for recognizing us for Child Abuse Prevention Month. We can't do this work alone, and some of the partners that were named on here we left a few out, I'm sure, but also want to recognize that Bridges to Hope, which is next door to us on our campus, is also a partner in helping to prevent child abuse and neglect. There's a couple of things there, symbols, the pinwheel symbol, North Carolina, recognizing child abuse prevention, and we left a couple of items for you guys to just kind of pass out. Once again, thank you, and we appreciate everyone and for your support that you've given Forsyth County Department of Social Services, as well as the residents in our community, because we couldn't do it without them as well. Thank you.
Thank you.
Good afternoon, Elizabeth Miller, 3569 Millhaven Road. I can follow instructions. I'm the CEO at The Parenting Path. I wanted to thank the commissioners this afternoon for the county's support of the child abuse prevention efforts in our county. I'd like to acknowledge Mr. Watts, Ms. Robinson, particularly our partners at DSS. They are wonderful partners for us. We work together to try and put an end to child abuse, which is really a terrible problem in our community, which has been, in my opinion, worsened by COVID substantially. So thank you all for your support. Thank you all for funding programs that help prevent child abuse and neglect, like our Juvenile Crime Prevention Council programs, among others. And we really appreciate all that you all do.
Thank you. And finally, we have another, get the picture first. Good. And the final resolution actually is designating new review officers to review and certify maps and plats for Forsyth County in accordance with North Carolina General Statute 47-30.2. Do we have a motion to approve that?
Move approval. So moved.
Motion by Commissioner Bessie, second by Commissioner Plyler. Any discussion? All in favor, please say aye. How about we take about a 5-minute recess for a little bio break here? We'll come back in about 5 minutes. slightly more than 5 minutes. Thank you for the recess. All right, we will return to actually the item dealing with our bond hearings. And let me get back to that. Actually, I'm going to invite Lee Plunkett, if he would come forward. He's our Assistant Chief Financial Officer, and he's going to review the items. And I'd ask you also just to indicate it'll be all four, you'll review all 4 items, and then we'll actually have we'll have a public hearing on each one.
That's correct. Yeah, there has to be according to our bond council, a public hearing each one, so I apologize for that. So all 4 bond orders are in front of you. As part of the bond orders, you as a commissioners are authorizing the issuance of each, and I'll go through those in a second. But the main purpose of these bond orders are to identify the amount and the purpose of the bonds, to identify that the security backing these bonds is your taxing authority as the board, and then also that this bond order will take effect, if approved, 30 days after its publication, which will be tomorrow. And these bonds will be sold with the remaining tranche of the 2016 referendum bonds. And the 4 bond orders in front of you, the first one is $22.92 million for schools, $8.5 million of which is for the biennial capital maintenance projects, and the remaining $14.42 million is a plus premium will go towards providing additional funding capacity for their project shortfalls. The second bond order is $2.3 million that will go to Forsyth Technical Community College for capital maintenance projects. The third is $2 million that will go towards the Parks and Recreation capital maintenance program and projects. And the fourth is $2 million that will go to general county projects, also for capital maintenance.
All right. Any questions for Lee? All right. The first public hearing then is a bond order authorizing the issuance of not to exceed $22,920,000 general obligation school bonds of the County of Forsyth, North Carolina. Speakers will have up to 15 minutes total to speak in favor of this request and up to 15 minutes total to speak in opposition. Is there anyone wishing to speak in favor of the bonds? Thank you, Elizabeth Motzinger, for persevering.
I am Elizabeth Motzinger, 6548 Woodmere Drive, Walkertown, North Carolina, a happy public citizen, and after the last couple of hours, grateful for that opportunity to be a private citizen. So thank you so much for your good natures, and it really is good to see this group of commissioners working so well together. It makes me happy to see that. I am just here, of course, to say always how important it is for the county commissioners and the school board to be supportive of our children together. And I appreciate how much historically the commissioners have supported and cared for our public schools. And although I am no longer a school board member, the future of our children is everything in the world to all of us. So I just thank you so much for this.
Is there anyone else wishing to speak in favor of the bond? Is there anyone wishing to speak in opposition to the bond? Hearing none, I declare the public hearing closed. And is there a motion?
So moved.
Motion by Commissioner Plyler.
Second.
Second by Commissioner Bessie. Any discussion? In favor, please say aye. Aye. Motion carries unanimously. Second public hearing is a bond order authorizing the issuance of not to exceed $2.3 million general obligation community college bonds in the County of Forsyth, North Carolina. Again, speakers will have up to 15 minutes to speak in favor, and they also have 15 minutes total to speak in opposition. Is there anyone wishing to speak in favor of the community college bond issue? Is there anyone wishing to speak in opposition to the bond? I'd like to declare the public meeting closed. And is there a motion?
So moved.
I have a motion by Commissioner Plyler.
Second.
Second by Vice Chairman Wisenhunt. Is there any discussion? All in favor, please say aye. Aye. All opposed? There are none. Motion carries unanimously. Third public hearing is a bond order authorizing the issuance of not to exceed $2 million general obligation bonds for Parks and Recreation into the County of Forsyth, North Carolina. Again, speakers will have up to 15 minutes total to speak in favor or 15 minutes to speak in opposition. Is there anyone wishing to speak in favor of the Parks and Recreation bonds? Is there anyone wishing to speak against the Parks and Recreation bonds? Declare public hearing closed. And do we have a motion?
So moved.
Motion by Commissioner Plyler. Is there a second?
Second.
Second by Vice Chair Wizenhut. Any discussion? All in favor, please say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Motion carries unanimously. Fourth public hearing is a bond order authorizing the issuance of not to exceed $2 million on general obligation public facilities bond in the County of Forsyth, North Carolina. Again, speakers will have up to 15 minutes total to speak in favor of the request or 15 minutes total to speak in opposition. Is there anyone wishing to speak in favor of the public facilities bonds? Anyone wishing to speak in opposition to public facilities bonds? Declare the public hearing closed. Is there a motion?
So moved.
Motion by Commissioner Plyler. Is there a second?
Second.
Second by Commissioner McDaniel. Any discussion? All in favor, please say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Motion carries unanimously. All righty. I think we are now ready for the minutes.
All right. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Good afternoon, board members.
Wait, no, got it. Next item on the agenda is approval of the minutes for the meeting of March the 30th, 2023. Do we have a motion?
So moved.
Motion by Commissioner Plyler. I'll second that. Any discussion? All in favor, please say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Motion carries unanimously.
Mr. Chairman, I believe there's still an item that needs to be voted on in the bonds, the one that did not require a public hearing.
Sorry, there's one that does not have a public hearing, and I apologize. My script has gotten a little mixed up. Not quite there yet. Yep. Yes. We have a resolution. No, that's not it. Sorry, I apologize. Thought that was it.
Isn't the resolution A3E?
Last one.
Hang on.
It's like it was cut off.
I am missing.
Yeah,
Yes.
it does appear that it was.
Got it right here, if you can read that.
Thank you, I can. I apologize, my papers are all mixed up because I jumped to the resolutions. Yes, so the final part of the agenda is a resolution of the Board of Commissioners of the County of Forsyth providing for the issuance of not to exceed $29,220,000 general obligation bonds, Series 2023A, and not to exceed $105,000 general obligation bonds, Series 2023B of the County of Forsyth County, and repealing certain bond orders authorizing refunding bonds.
So moved.
And there's no hearing required. Motion to approve by Commissioner Plyler. Is there a second?
Second.
Second by Commissioner McDaniel. Any discussion? All in favor, please say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Motion carries unanimously. Thank you, Mr. Attorney, for your handy laptop to take care of that. Thank you. And now, we've approved the minutes, and the one question I have now for our Madam Deputy Clerk is, do we have any calls or cards for the public session?
Mr. Chairman, we have one speaker, Mr. Andrew Roscoe. Could you please come forward and state your name and address for the record, please?
Come ahead. Mr. Roscoe, I apologize you've had to wait so long. You've been here a while. This is a very unusual meeting, but thank you for being here. And pleasure to meet you in person. We've exchanged a few emails. So
Andrew Roscoe, 5011 K-Brook Drive, 27105. I have a signed petition with 11 of my neighbors to improve the gunfire ordinance, because it can be loud and disruptive, uncomfortable to hear it in our neighborhood. Currently, it's at 300 feet from a structure. We're one of the lowest. I think Guilford's 450, Durham was 600, Mecklenburg was 900. We have one of the lowest feet from a structure out of those counties. If we could improve it, we would like it. We would appreciate it. Yeah, do all y'all have a copy of the?
We do.
Thank you.
Got one, thank you.
So if y'all could work on that, that'd be great. Any questions for me?
Thank you very much. We appreciate you being here, and certainly it's an issue that we will have been taking under advisement and will consider. Thanks.
May I?
Oh,
Just briefly, one quick question. Where'd you get the 5,000, pardon me, the 1,000 that you're suggesting? Any particular?
Mr. Watts, he printed it up for me.
Okay. All right, thank you.
It was and it was really just.
Previous request.
Yeah, it was throwback from a previous request we dealt with a couple years ago, and then I also provided him some of the data that we had at the time around the other jurisdictions. So, but I think from Mr. Roscoe's perspective, and any improvement above the 300 is a good lick. Yeah.
Be great.
I do have one question. Thank you for coming, and I wish I would have galvanized my neighbors for something like this too, because I tell you that we experienced quite a few gunshot sounds very often. I think just this month alone, the police has been at my door, because I have the camera system, about 3 times trying to identify who was doing the shooting per se. So I appreciate you and your neighbors bringing this to our attention. But how often would you say that you're hearing gunshots in your neighborhood?
I'd say he's in the backyard at least once a week. The duration can be for 15 minutes, pausing during that time, but it's annoying, disturbing. I actually got a bad review. I'm an Airbnb host. I got a bad review.
Oh, really?
I'm trying to earn an income, and it's affecting my income.
Well, I'll tell you, in my neighborhood, it makes us very anxious. I know that as soon as I hear it, it's kind of like a mental thing goes on, and I'm trying to not be near my windows, and because you just don't know what the issue is. So, yeah.
She needs to go to city council.
All right. Any other questions for Roscoe? Thank you.
All right.
All right, ready for me? Sorry to jump out there. I was in a hurry. All right, we do have some business items for consideration. We have reviewed these in briefing sessions. Hopefully, staff's been able to answer all the questions that you might have. I'll go ahead and dive into it. Agenda, I believe we're at agenda item 9, which is a resolution ratifying, authorizing the execution of interlocal agreements with Rural Hall, Village of Tobacconville, and the town of Walkertown. These are pass-through funds that were part of a state appropriation of $700,000. $100 was actually used for the Blues Lake project, but the remaining is used in these jurisdictions.
Move approval.
Motion approved by Vice Chair Wizenhut, second by Commissioner Bessie. Any discussion? All in favor, please say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Motion carries unanimously.
All right, agenda item 10 is a resolution approving a revision to the 2022-2023 Juvenile Crime Prevention Council funding plan. This reallocates $36,726, and the programs were actually listed.
Move approval.
Second.
Motion approved by Commissioner Plotter, second by Commissioner McDaniel. Any discussion? All in favor, please say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Motion carries unanimously.
Agenda item 11 is a resolution authorizing submission of an application and, if awarded, acceptance of a Clean Air Act grant from the United States Environmental Protection Agency to the Forsyth County Office of Environmental Assistance and Protection in the amount of $47,300. There's no local match. This will provide some equipment and some design services.
Move approval.
Motion approved by Commissioner Plotter, second by Commissioner Bessie. Any discussion? All in favor, please say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Motion carries unanimously.
Agenda item 12 is a resolution authorizing the execution of an agreement between Forsyth County and Professional Software for Nurses Incorporated to provide software licenses for school nurses in the amount of not to exceed $55,450.
Move approval.
Approved by Commissioner Plotter.
Second.
Second by Vice Chair Wizenhut. Any discussion? All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries unanimously.
Agenda item 13 is a resolution approving the renewal of Laserfish document management subscription services with MCCI. It was bid. The lowest responsible bidder was MCCI in the amount of $142,140.
Move approval.
Motion approved by Commissioner Plyler. I'll second it. Any discussion? All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries unanimously.
All right, agenda items 14 and 15, I think you can take in combined. They're resolutions awarding the purchase of new tires from B. Roth Tire and Automotive Incorporated and Parrish Tire Company, both under North Carolina state contract, the amount of to not exceed $120,000 each.
Move approval.
Second.
Approved by Commissioner Plyler,
Second.
second by Commissioner Linville. Any discussion? All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries unanimously.
You can take items 16 and 17 together. They're resolution approving refunds by the tax assessor and collecting the amount of $1,027.28 and $1,403.25.
Move approval.
Approved by Commissioner Plyler,
Second.
second by Commissioners Bessie and McDaniel. Any discussion? All in favor, please say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Motion carries unanimously.
And item 18 are reports, February 2023 contribution-based benefit cap report.
Move approval.
Motion approved by Commissioner
Plyler.
Plyler, excuse me. Second by Commissioner Linville. Any discussion? All in favor, please say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Motion carries unanimously.
All right, and that is it for the formal meeting. Give us just, if you want to adjourn, unless there's any other business, give us a short period of time. We can just switch over.
Good. We'll stand adjourned until you're set up to ready to go. Thank you.
Ready, guys.
Anything else that's on that agenda, and then we can hit the discussion items.
All right, that's perfect. Chris, you can go over our items for consideration.
Good afternoon again. I have a feeling you're going to dread seeing me after I'm here a lot and we have these contentious cases. I hope that's not the case. But anyway, I think this one might be a little simpler. F-1629, the petitioner is Sandra N. Roberts. It's a 1.39 acre tract on the south side of North Main Street between Cedarwood Trail and Rich Fork Creek Drive. This is down in the southeast area of the county, close to High Point. The request is a special use limited request from LB to HBL. Again, this is a subject property shown on the Legacy Growth Management Area map in Growth Management Area 4, Future Growth Area, but again, right on the edge of both Forsyth County and City of High Point. This is the subject property highlighted in yellow. Again, it is existing LB zoned property. It has most recently been used as a house, but I believe it's been vacant for a period of time. And it is directly adjacent to HBL property to the southeast that is currently used as a storage services retail business. This is the subject property outlined in yellow on the countywide aerial photos. You see that you see the HBL to the southeast, which is the storage services retail business, and I believe this L is for an expansion of that. This is view south into the subject property, subject site. You see there's a single family house there, appears to be unused. But again, it is zoned LB. This is looking southeast down North Main Street towards High Point. The subject property is on the right. This is the view northwest up North Main Street, looking back towards Winston-Salem to the west along High Point Road. This is the view northeast across from the subject site. This is across High Point Road. And this is adjacent property to the west. This is existing storage services retail on the adjacent HBL zoned parcel. This is the area plan. Actually, it's kind of funny in a way. The area plan, the actual map itself is mislabeled. That should be labeled red. It's actually, it recognizes the existing LB and it recognizes that there should not be any future expansion of the LB, but it actually recommends that that be used for commercial purposes. That's what the narrative says. This request would not expand the boundaries of the existing commercial zoning districts in the area. The request would develop an underutilized commercial property. The request is generally consistent with both legacy and the specific land use recommendation of the area plan. This was heard by the Planning Board at their March 9th, 2023 public hearing. There were no speakers in opposition, and the Planning Board did vote unanimously to recommend approval. With that, I'll be glad to answer any questions.
Any questions for Chris? Got it.
The next item is another public hearing item. I'm going to close that, and I will share this, which is F-1628. This is a rezoning request of Clay Pigeon Properties LLC of a 13.71 acre parcel on the north side of Union Cross Road at its intersection with Thomasville Road. This is a general use rezoning request from RS20 to RS9. This is a subject property shown on the Legacy Growth Management Area Plan map. It is located in the Suburban Neighborhoods Growth Management Area 3, and it is directly adjacent to city zoning jurisdiction, but this is located within the Forsyth County zoning jurisdiction. This is the location map, subject property highlighted in yellow. Again, it is part of the property actually fronts on 109 Thomasville Road. A majority of the site fronts on Union Cross Road. And again, it does abut an adjacent RS12 zoning district. The subject property is currently zoned RS20, but there's RS9, AG, RM18, RS12. It's kind of a real hodgepodge in this area as the city and county come together in that location. This is the subject property outlined in yellow. On the countywide aerial photography, you see this is, I think, been a homestead with some agricultural uses and some existing wooded vegetation. This is the subject property shown on the Southeast Suburban Area Plan update. It does recommend single-family residential, 0 to 8 units per acre as the recommended density, and the request to go from RS20 to RS9 is consistent with that recommendation. This is looking north from Union Cross Road, so this is looking at the subject property. This is looking west onto the subject property. You can see this is an area that was probably pasture land at some point, and you see there are already some manholes here for probably a future subdivision. But again, they're going through the process to get this rezoned, and then they'll run back through a subdivision plan approval through Planning Board. This is looking eastbound on Union Cross Road. The subject property is on the left. This is looking westbound at the North Carolina 109 Union Cross Road intersection. The subject property is on the right. And this is looking at the existing single-family house on the subject property. In summary, the request is consistent with Legacy in that it supports a mixture of housing densities and types. Again, it is sewered. It is adjacent to other higher density single-family residential zoning classifications and actually some multifamily in the area. The Southeast Suburban Area Plan update recommends single-family residential zoning of 0 to 8 units per acre at this location. And again, the site does have access to public water and sewer. This was heard by the Planning Board at their March 9th, 2023 public hearing. There were several speakers in opposition. The opposition cited concerns with traffic, property values, and concerns about making a connection to their neighborhood. Following discussion, the Planning Board did vote 6-1 to recommend approval of the request. Regardless of whether this property is rezoned or not, there will be a subdivision here, so some of those concerns are not necessarily germane to the rezoning request. The concerns kind of center around interconnectivity, and again, regardless of whether this is rezoned from RS20 to RS9, if a subdivision is put here, it will be connected to the existing streets in that subdivision. So with that little aside, I will entertain any questions.
Questions for Chris?
All right. Very good. All right, Mr. Chairman, I'll just kind of do a quick overview of the other items, and then we'll get to our two discussion items. You got one special resolution for Foster Care Awareness Month for Forsyth County. You've got a resolution recognizing May 2023 as Mental Health Awareness Month, and then a resolution recognizing May 2023 as Historic Preservation Month in Forsyth County. So you'll hear presentations, not next week, but probably at the formal meeting on those. We have some budget and finance items. You've got one more bond matter really related to the issuance side of things. You've got the annual Home and Community Care Block Grant funding plan for older adults. That's kind of part of what we do in the spring and kind of heading into next year's budget. You've got a budget ordinance to increase revenues and appropriations for the Department of Public Health for community linkages to care for overdose prevention and response. And so what you're going to see in this agenda, item 10 is actually the appropriation of the opioid settlement monies. But what you're going to see is not only are we getting opioid funds kind of directly to Forsyth County, but some other ones will come through the state, since public health really is state administered, state supervised, locally administered health and human services. Even if you get a direct appropriation, there'll be other dollars that flow through the state. So I think we'll see some of that. You've got some grants. You've got a resolution completing the Partners Health Management Opioid Abatement Funding Questionnaire, and then you've got an agreement with Partners around naloxone, and then an associated budget ordinance amendment. You've got an item related to public safety grant funds for a medication-assisted treatment program for Forsyth County Detention Center, a grant that the sheriff had applied for and won. And then you've got a resolution authorizing execution of a grant agreement between Forsyth County and the Department of Transportation for airfield lighting rehabilitation. That's been a project that's been on the radar at Smith Reynolds for quite some time. 2 ARPA projects, one with the agreements, one with Legal Aid of North Carolina, and then one with Centers for Exceptional Children. We'll go into detail about those next Thursday. You've got a number of contracts. You've got probably something that has been on the radar for a long time. We rebid it, but we do have information about a guaranteed maximum price with Samet Corporation for the Tanglewood Clubhouse project. And so Damon's going to be proud to bring that to you after months and months. You've got a resolution selecting and authorizing a contract with CGL Companies to perform a security and staffing assessment for the new courthouse. That really is a project where the staffing levels in the detention center were established by a consultant quite some time ago. Obviously, even before the current facility was built, with the changes in the courthouse on how prisoners are transported between the detention center and the courthouse, we really do need to revisit that whole staffing analysis. And so we're asking you to hire a company to do that. There's been a lot of work in conjunction with us and the Sheriff's Department about who's the right company to do that, somebody who's got a lot of experience in that arena. That really avoids a disagreement between us and the Sheriff's Department about what that could be, and really brings in an expert to say, here's what that needs to be, and kind of in conjunction with that whole project. It does, what that says is, since we won't have the results of that study backed by budget, we will have in the budget, we will work to adjust what we think that might be in the manager's recommended budget. And then we know we're going to come back and deal with that in July or August, the courthouse later this fall, and we'll be prepared to match up that staffing recommendation with their operation. So we'll talk about that in right much detail as we go through it. You've got an agreement with WC Construction Company as a design builder for pre-construction services for an airport car wash project. As part of the services that we provide to the rental car companies that are housed at the airport, we have to have some type of car wash facility for them to operate out of that. And so since we own the facility, we thought it made sense to own the car wash as well. What we're going to be able to do, since we currently do not use that for county fleet or school fleet, we actually believe that we can try to do that in a way where there's, we know we spend dollars every year for car washes out of the general fund. The schools do as well. And so we're working out a kind of a shared arrangement with that. But the airport is going to use their funding to build it. And then we'll figure out how to make that fair for everybody involved and not violate any FAA covenants in that process. But you'll hear more about that obviously next Thursday. Got a contract with B3 Security Group for security services at Tanglewood and Triad Parks went out for bid on that, and we have the results of that. Purchase of a couple of vehicles, went out and got bids on that and have that to present to you. A contract with Law Enforcement Services Group for pre- and post-hire psychological and medical services. That's part of what the sheriff does is he hires new officers. Huge contract that we bid every couple of years for food services, and we're going to bring to you the recommendation of the Airmark Correctional Services for Law Enforcement Detention Center for on-site food services. It's a very expensive contract. We subcontract all of that out. There is sort of the national group of vendors, and we had good response from them, and that group has done a good job negotiating that. We've got a couple that deal with cellular services, and so there's actually some changes we're working on as we bring it to you next week. We do buy cellular services off state contract pricing. They do a lot of work at the state level to come up with the best deals, and so we're going to bring that to you and just get clear authorization from me to sign those agreements. They do change from time to time, and so it's I think basing that on the state contracts makes sense. We've got an agreement with Forsyth County and Communication Access Partners for interpretation services, a service we provide through DSS. You'll hear more about that. And then the behavioral health funds. So next week, and Chantel provided you a copy of the committee's recommendations for both opioid funds and maintenance of effort funds. And so take a look at that, and she will go into detail with other staff next week about that. But, we tried to do that really in advance of budget. I'm probably going to give you a large document next week of special appropriation request. We've not, and so we wanted to go ahead and get those to you early as we can, and then, that will follow on with alternate service level requests that we have as we head into late May. I think I'm going to give you my county manager's recommended budget on May 25th, and that deadline's coming at us fast and furiously. So be working on that. You got refunds and the contribution-based benefit report. So that's it for the formal meeting. We do have a 10 o'clock meeting. One of those morning sessions that we do every couple of months. We talked a little bit about the draft agenda last week. We've not really changed anything. The planning update is going to be shifted into more of an economic development sewer shed kind of future discussion about that. We don't have a whole lot to update you on that, but we do have both the schools, the community college, partners, and a periodic ARPA update, so we can show you that. The biggest piece of it next week, I felt like going into budget, we needed to all get information about the status of all these construction projects we have going on everywhere. And so General Services is going to kind of do an update they did several months ago around just update on construction projects and how things are going. So with that, the only other item we had was we had received a request, and I know y'all have had some conversations from a group called PCCI about the budget in property project. You essentially loaned them some money to purchase that property. A loan payment is coming due, and I think they have made a request that Gordon will review with you, and we'll need some direction as to do something or do nothing or somewhere in between. So. Thank you.
Good afternoon. I've just handed you a one-page summary of the background with PCCI. As you remember, in 2019, they came before the board. They were affiliated with the Shalom organization, and they requested a loan to purchase what used to be the Budget Inn on Peters Creek Parkway, tear it down, and then to construct low-income housing. There were two options that were presented to the board at that time. One was a bridge loan of $600,000 that would be repaid by PCCI to the county as soon as they secured financing to build the low-income housing. And the second choice was a $600,000 loan that would be forgivable as long as the property was used for low-income housing for 50 years. The board at that time chose to go with the first option, the bridge loan, which meant the loan would be repayable. The 2019 agreement between the county and PCCI provided that there would be 72 housing units built that at least 25% of those units would be for residents with incomes at or below 30% of area median income. The remainder would be rented to residents with income at or below 60% of area median income. These low-income requirements would be required to last for 50 years. And finally, the loan would be interest-free until it became payable as of May 1st, 2023. And the interest is set at 8% per year, which would translate to $4,000 per month. And so that interest will start accruing next month. By a letter of March 23rd, 2023, to the chairman, PCCI requested that the county forgive the loan. They are now proposing to build 10 fewer units than what was required in our agreement. So they're now proposing to build 62 units rather than the 72. As part of the county agreement, it provided that any breach of that contract, such as not using the property for low-income housing, would entitle the county to $50,000 in liquidated damages. So going forward, the county has at least three options. There are more that you could come up with, but the three obvious ones would be, the first one would be to maintain the original agreement, collect interest until the loan is repaid, and require 72 low-income units to be constructed. That's just maintaining what the agreement currently is. The second option would be to extend the payment due date to a certain date in the future, and the board could choose to forgive the interest and allow the 62 units to be constructed. As I understand it from conversations with PCCI, they estimate that certain date would be sometime in the fall, but I have not been communicated a particular date. And the final option would be what PCCI's request is, and that would be for the county to forgive the loan and the interest and allow the 62 units to be constructed. Obviously, if the board chose to forgive the loan, you would want to put conditions that the units be used for low-income housing. The current requirement is 50 years, so that would probably be the obvious way to go. So the second option, to extend the due date, and the third option, to forgive the loan, those would each require board action. So I'm not here to recommend anything to you. I'm just laying out the facts as I've seen, and I'm happy to answer any questions that you have. And if you have any particular questions about housing, Kyle Haney is here. He's obviously our expert in that area.
What's our action deadline?
There is no particular deadline. The loan is due at the end of this month. That doesn't mean that the county has to take any action immediately. So the county has the option, if the agreement's breached or if we're not being paid interest, we have the option to proceed to foreclosure, but they're obviously, we're not making any steps in that direction. And we wouldn't do so until a firm direction from the board.
Chairman, if I may, I have a question relative to the current interest rate on the initial contract. And then the second question was, and I'm not sure if you may have the answer to this, is how much have they been able to acquire in terms of funding, grants and loans, other places?
So what they said last week, and they also said this in the letter, is that they have acquired $12 million in federal housing credits, which can be sold on the open market. And then they've required, I believe, $3.8 million from the city. Of that, I'm not sure that they actually have the cash in hand. The $600,000 the city paid them 4 years ago, and they have a commitment from the city of $3.2 million extra. At the beginning, I believe they received some additional funding from other sources. I don't know what that is.
Yeah, so $12 million, you said housing credits, and I thought that they had a federal grant out there somewhere. Oh, $12 million. I thought it was, okay, fair enough. That's
I
all.
guess it's really housing credits.
Credits. You can turn it into
The grant is
money.
housing credits.
Right.
Yeah, so, okay, fair enough.
It doesn't sound like they've been successful even from the get-go. Is that correct?
Well, what they explained is that the location did not favor the way these housing credits were being issued at the time, and that for whatever reason in the past year, the methodology for the federal tax credits has changed. So now they have been able to acquire those. So I believe they're ready to proceed with this at this point. It's just taken them 4 years to get there.
You think they can make it?
I have no idea.
One more question, Chairman. So wanted to just make sure that I'm understanding, 25 of the 62 or 72 units would be used for just low income.
Yeah, there are many definitions for low and moderate income, but what they're using is the at or below 30% of area median income. So that 25% would fall into that category. So if it were 72 units, it would be 18 would have to be at or below 30%. And if it's 62, it would be 16 units would be at or below the 30%. And the remainder have to be at or below 60% of area median income.
And remain that way.
And remain that way, yes, sir.
Doesn't switch back to now we'll start charging full rate or something for some of them.
I'm sorry.
Yeah, no, go ahead.
I'm sorry I was not here last week, but did they break down the price per unit? How much it's going to be per unit? I mean, before you even get in.
They did, and I don't have that right in front of me.
250 to 850. I think 250 for one bedroom, and I think they go up to 2 bedroom. But that's what was indicated on paper and their explanation.
I think that's correct. 250 to 850.
That sounds correct, yes.
Is the range for rental.
It's, okay, I've got the letter in front of me. It's, it says the range would be $280 to $850.
Comment, yeah, go ahead.
This is in my old district on the council, and together with another project done by the same prospective builders, also in my district, it was about the only new workforce affordable housing being constructed as far as I know, in the county during that period. So they have an outfit lined up to actually do the construction that has a track record of recent success on similar projects. And the nonprofit group, Peters Creek Community Initiative and the Sloan project, did what they said they were going to do with the money. They acquired the property, the initial money they got. They acquired the property. They demolished the existing, basically slum hotel that was on the site. They assisted all the residents there relocate, and they immediately initiated applications for the tax credits, and they were turned down for 3 years in a row because of the then applicable rules on where you could build housing with that. At the last minute, the standards changed in the fourth year to make the project eligible, and they hustled around, got an application in for the same project that they've been bidding on, basically, and it was approved. So now they do have the financing. They do have an additional influx of funding from the city. I see no reason to believe it wouldn't move forward as planned at this point. And either options 2 or 3 would give us the opportunity to be involved in moving a workforce affordable housing project forward without the county paying a great deal of the cost. But they were sharing what I thought were some good examples of local workers who would fall into the income categories that would be eligible here. You've got average fast food worker salaries that are in the range, average city sanitation and county custodian salaries would fall within the range that that would be able to afford a unit here. Teacher aides, Wake Forest University housekeepers, basically, sort of the heart of the not very well paid but essential workers in our area are the types of households that would be getting the 62 units of high quality, well located, affordable housing opportunity. It's the kind of housing that we desperately need more of in our area to meet the demand for folks that really can't, as a practical matter, afford current market rates for good housing.
And I personally have no problem with 2 without a doubt.
Chairman, if I may, with all due respect, Dan, thank you for sharing your perspective in terms of history and what you know of the PCCI development. However, I would have to say that my rendition in terms of what's happened over the last 2 to 3 years is somewhat different. This area was infested, yes, with crime and homeless people and veterans as well. And sorry, I'm really close to this particular thing because I had a very close person to live in the housing facility that was demolished and they were put out and they had no place to go and no place to stay. So maybe you heard that they assisted a few, but for the masses, that did not happen. So I just wanted to just give some blighted history from my perspective in terms of their worth of work. I'm glad this is manifesting, but I'm always going to advocate for the least of these. And I understand that workforce folks need low-income housing, but our homeless and our veterans need services and housing as well. So I'll be thinking through this in the next couple weeks about what I decide to do in terms of options 2 and 3. But I just wanted to share my perspective, so thank you.
I have one question. Is the board comfortable with considering this in the next cycle?
I'm okay with considering it, but I'm not okay with any of the options. I could consider option 2, but not to forgive the interest. I just do. Counties do not do housing, and I hate to start thinking that we can hand out taxpayer money and not charge interest. I cannot wrap my arms around that, never have been able to, but I could go with option 2, but not to forgive the interest. That's tax dollars, and there are many taxpayers out there right now who would love to have a loan and not pay any interest.
Are we okay with that cycle? No, that we would actually be considering this on the 18th, May 18th. The next cycle would put us to the regular
May
meeting.
4th is actually the voting date. We would be.
Oh, Oh, you're talking about
Well, but it's not on the first briefing
I meant
today,
next
so-
cycle is what I was suggesting, but I have no problem with earlier, but I thought that would give, I heard Commissioner
think it'd be
McDaniel
better.
talk about a little more time sleeping on it. We could go into the next cycle, which would be the May 18th board meeting. Any problems with that? Go ahead.
Thank you, Chair Martin. I just wanted to say first, I definitely, understand where Commissioner Wizenhunt is going as it relates to taxpayer dollars and, essentially, we acting as the stewards over those dollars and not setting precedents. And I think on average, that's just a great way to govern. However, I would just like to remind us that Winston-Salem, Forsyth County is in a state of emergency around housing. We don't have to even put, an adjective, whether it's affordable workforce housing, to the tune of 19,000 units that we need within 7 years and counting. And I did basic math, and Dr. Martin could check it because I'm social studies. That amounts to almost 600 units a year that we need to have available to meet the demand. So my concern is that in a state of emergency, we may have to do things that normally we would not do, but to, make sure that in this time we do our best to take into consideration the needs of our citizens that are in the obviously need of housing, which essentially, to me, is a human right. And if we, I think, not consider that that's a human right to be in houses, we're going to pay for it, maybe not with the taxpayer dollars, as it relates to forgiving loans, but in high crime rate in other areas that I would dare not want to be in, as it relates to being safe. But I would lastly conclude by wondering if there is any consideration around if this group could apply for any of the ARPA dollars to instead of the loan piece.
Well, I guess we can check, but at the moment, I think our ARPA dollars are out there. However, we expect fully that some of those will probably not be spent and will return, and we may have some to reallocate in the future. I think at the moment, where they're allocated. But I think it could change in the future, without a doubt.
Thank you.
Thank you. Was there another discussion item that you mentioned?
It was just winter, it was just next week's morning session, PCCI.
The only thought I had about the work session was I know that we talked about trying to arrange something for the Aerox guys to come in and talk about what they're doing. It just struck me that might be a kind of an opportunity. I think it's whether their people are in town, et cetera, and so forth. But I had a little breakfast update with them, and I said, you need to share that with a whole group. They're not asking for anything. And I asked them, I said, I think just an update of the progress they've made since we helped them get started through the chamber back about 3 or 4 years ago has been good, I think.
The last conversation I had with Clerk Ashley was just reach out to them and see what date worked for them. So I've not connected with her to see if she had heard back.
We could throw that.
But we can certainly
that date and
ask.
time, which gives a different kind of a mix in the time.
If it's set, if the board wishes, we can certainly invite them to next Thursday and work them in the schedule.
I mean, it's probably 15 minutes worth. Anything else?
Can we give them 15? Can we put that in writing?
We could say you have 15 minutes. All right. Anything else? Do we have a motion to adjourn?
Oh, thank you.
So moved. Commissioner Bessie, I'll second it. Stand adjourned.
Oh,
I'm a little